281. Arcane Rangers and the Last Preparations of the Old Times. The world is always eerily quiet before a storm. The day before the first task began, all of Hogwarts seemed to hold its breath, tense with anticipation. Students whispered in the corridors, excited and anxious, guessing what horrors the champions would face. No one could have imagined, however, that the eye of this storm would be the calmest place of all. The floating city, the City of Dawn. In the core workshop of Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, nicknamed the Dawn Blacksmith, there was no tension, only a burning excitement and absolute confidence. "Harry, over here, look at the treasure we've cooked up for you." Fred's voice rang from the depths of the workshop, equal parts pride and excitement. Harry stepped through the temporary portal Hermione had set up. His feet were on solid ground, but his eyes took in another world. Giant alchemical furnaces breathed soft blue flames, dozens of oddly shaped alchemical golems manipulated precision instruments, and the air smelled of metal coolants and crushed magic crystal. In the center of the workshop, a dark silver contraption hung on a life-sized humanoid stand. Its lines were smooth and powerful. It didn't look like clumsy armor, but a tight-fitting combat suit assembled from countless precise modules. Pale blue energy veins crawled across every joint, flickering in the workroom light like a sleeping thing breathing. "We call it Arcane Ranger Unit 1. George patted the suit's chest, producing a crisp metallic clang. "Come on, stop gawking. Try it on." With the twins helping, Harry shed his Hogwarts robes. The suit split open with a click. As he stepped in, it sealed itself automatically. It wasn't cold metal. A liquid film of energy clung to his skin and adjusted its tightness with his breathing. The suit was light, elastic, and didn't restrict movement at all. "Ready? Activate." Fred snapped his fingers. Buzz. The blue veins across the suit flared. A warm current swept over Harry. A translucent combat mask rose from the collar and sealed itself. The world shifted. A pale blue HUD floated to the right of his vision, showing heart rate, magic reserves, and suit energy levels. George's voice came through the built-in communicator, clear in his ear. "Hermione wrote you a simple combat assist system. Now try the first core function, the wind release module." "How do I use it?" Harry asked, uncertain. "With your mind. Concentrate, decide where you want to go, then give it a breath of magic." Harry focused on an empty parts rack 10 meters away. He gathered the wind elemental magic inside him as Fred had shown. Whoosh! His vision blurred for a heartbeat, and then he was standing steadily beside the parts rack. No run-up, no incantation, just thought, and 10 meters were gone. "Wow!" Ron's eyes went wide beside him. This is faster than apparition." Harry's heart raced. It was an incredible, precise sensation. Speed and space obeyed by will. "Of course," Fred explained, triumphant. "Apparition uses spatial magic. Ours uses wind elements for ultra-high-speed displacement. Power consumption's tiny, and the best part, it's safe to use inside Hogwarts. Perfect for dodging a dragon's breath or a big beast's swipe." "Try this next, the Air Rune Shield," George called. He pressed a button and a training dummy suspended in midair fired an orange-red energy bolt at Harry. Harry flinched. The danger indicator on his mask flared red, and a crimson line tracked the projectile's trajectory. He raised his left arm automatically. Buzz! A pale blue circular shield composed of hexagonal energy grids sprang into being before him. The bolt struck it with a muffled thud and vanished. The shield only flickered. Harry looked at his unharmed body and down at the suit's faint glow. Power and confidence swelled through him like a rising tide. He was no longer the boy who had to rely on luck and friends in critical moments. At this moment, he felt like a future warrior, armed with arcane power. At ancient Hogwarts Castle, the other 3 champions were finishing their own old-fashioned preparations. The library was stifling. Cedric Diggory stood sweating in front of a tall bookshelf. He had coaxed a stone into a tail-wagging Labrador with a flick and poof. "Excellent, Cedric! You did it!" his friends cheered. Cedric wiped his forehead but didn't look pleased. "Not fast enough," he muttered. Transfiguration took time, and he couldn't be sure a dog would distract an adult dragon long enough. His plan was Hufflepuff through and through, kind, clever, and naive in the face of raw power. In an empty charms classroom, Fleur Delacour closed her eyes and spoke an ancient, difficult spell. Rings of silvery white light pulsed from her wand as she tried to draw on her Vila heritage to lull the dragon to sleep. The halo wavered and finally snapped and died as she hit a tricky syllable. She opened her eyes, beauty creased with anxiety. Such delicate magic demanded enormous mental control. Success against a raging beast seemed slim. By the black lake, the cold wind bit. Victor Crumb stood bare-chested, muscles tensing. Karkaroff watched him with a stern eye. "Faster, Victor! Your spell isn't quick enough!" Crumb roared and swung his wand. A blinding red light lanced out and shattered a floating wooden plank on the water. Conjunctivitis curse! Simple, direct, brutal. His plan was to blind the dragon by hitting its eyes with a debilitating curse. It was the most straightforward, practical tactic among the three. Whether it was Cedric's transfiguration ruse, Fleur's sleep enchantment, or Crumb's blinding curse, all three champions shared the same mindset. Find a weakness, use a trick, and hope small gambits win big. They didn't realize that on another plane, their opponent wasn't thinking about defeating the dragon in the old way. He was planning how to dismantle it in a manner that would be spectacular and unmistakable. That gulf in approach was the chasm between old and new eras of thinking and power. Late that night, the last night before the task, Jason's research lab burned bright. Harry, in the Arcane Ranger suit, stood before Jason. The older man hadn't taught him tactic after tactic or analyzed Draco's detailed report. He simply watched Harry, then picked up something from the console and handed it over. It was a palm-sized circular disc of some unknown golden metal. Its surface was etched with layered, intricate runes, forming a perfect three-dimensional magic circle. Holding it, Harry felt a terrifying, condensed thunderstorm roll beneath the metal. "This is the thunder-binding rune disc," Jason said, his voice calm and steady. "I've sealed a divine chain inside, attuned with my power as a third-tier archmage. Its power is enough to lock down an adult Hungarian horntail, body and soul, instantly." Harry's hand trembled. He stared at Jason, stunned. "Remember, Harry." Jason's golden eyes held him. "Your task tomorrow isn't to take risks, not to fight, and certainly not to steal that stupid golden egg." He paused, so the words landed with deliberate force. "Your task is to demonstrate to the entire world, in the most shocking and unreasonable way, that before the absolute power of the City of Dawn, these so-called deadly trials are nothing but a one-sided performance, rules set by us." "Go," Jason said as a final instruction. "Let them see what the dawn of a new era truly looks like." Harry clenched the rune disc. The metal was cold, but the thunder within it made heat crawl through him. The nervousness was gone. In its place burned an unprecedented, fierce will to show the world exactly what they meant. 282, the final swan song of old magic. The first task of the Triwizard Tournament began to thunder into life. At the edge of the Forbidden Forest, a vast enclosure had been carved out, its perimeter built up with heavy rocks and magical wards. The stands that ringed the arena were packed. Every face showed excitement, anticipation, or raw tension. On the highest judge's platform, a mosaic of reactions unfolded. Dumbledore sat as composed as ever, as if the imminent, mortal danger before him were merely a carefully staged play. Karkaroff and Madame Maxime were another sight entirely. Their faces were grave, hands clenched on the armrests, eyes fixed on the champion's tent with palpable worry. Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic, lounged back with a faint, almost imperceptible look of schadenfreude. Hogwarts having two champions had cost him face, and he seemed to relish the thought of seeing the cheaters make fools of themselves. Beside him, Barty Crouch Jr., disguised as Moody, remained silent. His magical eye spun like a wayward searchlight, its strange, flickering glow fixed on the tent. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ludo Bagman bellowed through a sonorous charm, "welcome to the first task of the Triwizard Tournament. Our four champions will now face the ultimate test of courage and cunning, dragons." As his voice faded, the huge iron gate on one side of the arena creaked open, revealing the first chained beast. A Swedish short snout, its silver-blue scales catching the sun, raised its head. It was not the largest of the dragons, but its furious eyes and the steady spill of blue fire from its mouth were enough to make anyone falter. First up, the champion from our very own Hogwarts, Cedric Diggory. Amid cheers, Cedric stepped from the tent. Without hesitation, he flicked his wand and pointed at a rock in the center of the arena. A flash of transfiguration magic rippled over it. With a small yelp, the rock became a lively Labrador retriever. The dog barked and darted toward the Swedish short snout, weaving around its massive claws as if eager to play. "Brilliant transfiguration," Bagman cried. "A fantastic tactic. He's distracted the dragon." The dragon, puzzled, lowered its head to sniff the dog, whose tail wagged obliviously. Now, Cedric moved. He surged forward like an arrow for the dragon's nest, where a single golden egg gleamed among a heap of ordinary eggs. He reached in, seized the gleaming prize, and began to run. In that instant, the short snout realized it had been tricked. It roared, its spiked tail whistling through the air, and lashed out at Cedric. "Watch out!" A collective gasp went up from the stands. Cedric rolled with astonishing speed and narrowly avoided the tail. Even so, the scorching heat singed his cheek. A searing burn ran from his cheek to his ear, the skin blistered and raw. Gritting his teeth against the pain, he clutched the golden egg and scrambled out of the arena. He had succeeded, but by the smallest margin and at a heavy cost. The crowd erupted in thunderous applause for his courage and ingenuity, and the judges awarded him generous marks. Next, the jewel of Beauxbatons, Fleur Delacour. Fleur entered with the grace of her school. Her opponent was a comparatively placid Welsh green. She did not employ a distraction. Instead, she raised her wand and intoned a soft, ancient charm. Rings of silvery light, cool and moonlike, spread from her wand and settled over the dragon. Under the spell, its irritable mood began to calm. Its eyelids drooped, and a contented rumble came from its throat. "It's a hypnosis charm, a very old, very deep piece of magic," Dumbledore observed. Confident, Fleur lifted the hem of her gown and stepped lightly toward the nest. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until the dragon, drowsy and dust-snuffling, suddenly sneezed. The explosion of air from its nostrils sent a gout of flame and sparks forward. A small flare caught the hem of Fleur's silk dress. "Ah!" she cried, elegance abandoned. She slapped at the flames, which were quickly stamped out, but a blackened hole marred the fabric and her hair was mussed. Still, she grabbed the golden egg and fled the arena. She escaped physical harm, but the performance had been a messy one. Now the star of Durmstrang, Victor Krum. Krum strode in with the blunt efficiency of Durmstrang. His opponent was the Chinese fireball. He did not try to dodge or deceive. He planted his feet, pointed his wand straight at the dragon's head, and shouted a curse in Bulgarian. "Conjunctivitis curse!" A thick, blinding red beam burst from his wand and struck one of the fireball's eyes. The dragon screamed in agony. Blinded in one eye, it thrashed into a furious, disoriented rampage, stamping and swiping. Under the beast's wild movements, several ordinary eggs in the nest were crushed with sickening cracks. Krum seized the chaos as cover, darted forward, took the golden egg, and left the arena unscathed, strategically flawless. A tense murmur ran through the judge's box. Madame Maxime finally spoke for the panel. "Victor Krum, while you recovered the golden egg, your methods caused the ruin of several dragon eggs. That is a serious harm to magical creatures. Points will be deducted." Though he had emerged physically uninjured, Krum paid in points for his harsh tactics. The first three champions' efforts were over. Cleverness and daring, beauty and subtlety, brute force and precise brutality, all had achieved their goals only with great risk, scar, and scorch. The message to the crowd was clear. This task was deadly. Even the best might be wounded, or worse. A hush fell over the arena. All eyes turned to the last tent. The final champion, Harry Potter. Waiting behind the canvas was the most fearsome of the four, the Hungarian Horntail. 283, Dimensionality Reduction, Strike in the New Century. The last champion, Harry Potter. Ludo Bagman's voice echoed through the arena. The first three champions' performances had already made the task's difficulty clear. The price of blood and fire, the perilous ordeal, left a deep impression on everyone. The dragon trial was no child's game. Yet when Harry Potter stepped out of the champion's tent, the arena fell into an uncanny silence. He wore a peculiar, dark silver bodysuit with faint blue patterns that caught the sunlight, a look more like athletic gear than combat armor. His hands were empty. Whispers rippled through the stands. What is he doing? Where's his wand? Has he lost his nerve? At the judges' table, Fudge leaned back, ready to enjoy the spectacle. Karkaroff's smile was smug. He was already imagining how he might console Dumbledore afterward. "Oh my!" Ludo cried from the commentary booth. "Potter seems to have forgotten his equipment. Is he planning to run?" At that moment, the great iron gate across the arena began to rise. A colossal shape emerged from the darkness, a Hungarian horntail, fiercest, most brutal, deadliest of the four dragons. It was a full size larger than the previous three, its black scales gleaming with a metallic luster. Sparks shot from its nostrils with each breath, its eyes, burning with savage fury, fixed on the apparently defenseless young man at the center of the field. The crowd drew in a collective breath. The horntail roared, then opened its massive maw. A white-hot dragon's breath, as wide as a bucket, hurled toward Harry like a scythe. "No!" Gasps burst from the stands. Some shut their eyes. But at the last instant, something impossible happened. Harry vanished, literally gone as if erased from reality. The next second, he reappeared to the dragon's side, 10 meters from where he had stood. "What?" voices cried across the arena. The horntail was momentarily disoriented. Its great head swung left and right, searching for prey that had been right in front of it. Then it found him and let out a thunderous roar. Its spiky tail, a whip of deadly force, sliced through the air toward Harry. Harry had already gone. He flashed behind the dragon. What followed was a sight no one there would ever forget. Harry began to flicker around the horntail like a silver blur. Left, right, front, back, even over its head. Each appearance timed perfectly to avoid the dragon's attack. Every attempt to scorch him failed. By the time the flames erupted, Harry was elsewhere. Talons that could tear steel closed on nothing. The tail swung through empty air. The terrifying Hungarian horntail, the menace of the first three matches, became a clumsy, enraged giant lizard, flailing helplessly. Mouths hung open in the stands. Fudge's smile froze. Karkaroff's jaw sagged. Even Dumbledore's composed face showed plain shock. Only Barty Crouch Jr., masquerading as Moody, watched with a fanatical gleam in his ever-turning magical eye. After a dozen or more flashes, Harry reached the edge of the dragon's nest. The golden egg lay within reach. He didn't pick it up. Instead, he drew something from his waist. A palm-sized gilded disc covered in intricate runes that shimmered as if charged with power. He raised it, tossed it into the air, and when it reached its peak, he channeled his magic and activated it. Thunder-binding rune. Activate! There was a boom. A column of golden light shot into the sky, cleaving the air. The column exploded into a vast net of crackling lightning that spread over the dragon's nest and across the arena. Countless bolts, as thick as buckets, cascaded down and struck the horntail. Sizzles of power roared. The arena was bathed in blinding gold. The horntail let out an agonized shriek, pain, fear, and disbelief in every note. Its massive body trembled as the current seared it. Black scales were scorched. Its furious eyes now held only pain and submission. Seconds later, the lightning faded. The mighty beast collapsed with a heavy thud, not dead but utterly paralyzed, lying limp and only occasionally issuing weak growls, unable even to lift its head. Under that subdued gaze, Harry walked calmly to the center of the nest, bent and picked up the golden egg. He turned and strode toward the exit, clothes unmarked, as if the trial had been nothing more than a stroll. From entering the arena to retrieving the egg took no more than 3 minutes, but in those minutes, he had displayed a power that overturned everyone's understanding of magic. It was a dimensional strike from a new era imposed on the old. When Harry stepped out, the stadium finally erupted, not with the usual victor's cheers, but with a stunned tumult. Foreign students and professors alike filled with shock and a fearful reverence for a power they had only read about in papers. At the highest stands, Jason's golden eyes swept over the speechless judges, the dumbfounded crowd, and finally rested on the horntail, still paralyzed on the ground. From that day on, the name City of Dawn would be etched into people's minds and spoken across the world. The dawn of a new era had arrived. 284. New fear after silence. When the mountain-shaking, ocean-roaring clamor finally died away, even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Everyone replayed those 3 minutes in their heads, trying to make sense of what they had seen. It shattered everything they thought they knew about the world. On the judges' platform, the 5 judges sat frozen like statues. Ludo Bagman's hand, gripping the enchanted megaphone, trembled as he stammered. "Ha! Harry Potter." He completed it. Now it's time for the judges to score. But the scoring unraveled into chaos. Dumbledore was the first to raise his card, a perfect 10. His face still carried that gentle, unreadable smile, as if what had just happened were a delightful performance rather than a massacre. Madame Maxime followed with a 10 as well. As a Frenchwoman, she admired strength, and whatever Harry had just shown was beyond mere skill. When it came to Karkaroff, the air tightened. He was white-faced, and his lips trembled. He had meant to punish Harry with the lowest mark as an outlet for his fear and anger. Then he met Dumbledore's calm blue eyes, and in that look there was a question. "Are you sure?" Karkaroff's hand shook harder, and reluctantly he held up a 9. Minister Fudge, however, could not contain himself. He leapt to his feet with a whoosh, pointed at Harry, and bellowed at Dumbledore. "Cheating! This is blatant cheating. He used illegal devices. This isn't magic at all. What in the blazes is this?" His voice was sharp and panic-stricken. The low murmur from the stands cut off as everyone turned to the judge's platform. At once, Lucius Malfoy rose from the VIP box. He wore a dark blue robe tailored to perfection, leaned on his snake-headed cane, and spoke with the measured confidence of an old aristocrat. "Minister, may I remind you the rules only forbid outside assistance," Lucius said, brushing the silver serpent with a gloved hand. "They do not prohibit champions from using their own equipment. This Arcane Ranger combat suit is Mr. Potter's private property, gifted by Master Lester. Perfectly legitimate. Or are you suggesting?" His pale, golden eyes swept the arena, and his tone hardened slightly. "Are you saying advanced technology itself is a crime?" Fudge went a shade of liver red and opened his mouth, but no counter came. The rules did not forbid personal possessions, and technically, the armor belonged to Harry. With no option left, Fudge could only hand in a grudging 6, the lowest humiliation he could offer within the rulebook. Student reactions in the stands could not have been more divided. Hogwarts erupted, cheers so loud they seemed to tear the roof. The students were proud of Harry's overwhelming power, proud that their school had produced a monster of a champion. In their eyes, it was pure force, the new era slapping the old one. "Harry! Harry! Harry!" the Gryffindor section roared. Across the stadium, the Beauxbatons and Durmstrang students were stunned into silence, staring at Harry with a mixture of shock, awe, and a dawning helplessness. Fleur Delacour glanced at the scorched hole in her skirt, and then at the unmarked Harry, a frustration she had never felt before clenching her chest. The gap between them was no longer one bridged by effort and talent. It felt like a gulf between worlds. Victor Crumb's dark eyes fastened on Harry, admiration there, but also a stubborn unwillingness to accept it. In Slytherin stands, Draco Malfoy stood ramrod straight and with a near-fanatical fervor preached to his housemates. "Do you see? This is the power of the City of Dawn. This is the future." His voice trembled with excitement. Under the Master's guidance, a brand new era is coming. That old magical world, just like that dragon, can only bow before true power. The Slytherins watched him with a mixture of reverence, fear, and envy. Many of them sensed dimly and uneasily that their world was at the brink of real change. Outside the champion's tent, Hermione and Ron surged forward the moment Harry stepped out, and the three of them embraced. "That was amazing, Harry. Holy crap, you're practically a superhero," Ron blurted, thrilled and nonsense-filled. Hermione's eyes shone with a pride that needed no words. A familiar voice came up behind them. "Well done, Harry." They turned to see Jason approaching with Dumbledore and Snape. He still wore his calm, measured expression. His white hair hovered in the breeze, his golden eyes unreadable. That single line, simple and sparse, meant more to Harry than any prize. "You didn't disappoint me," Jason added. A warm rush swelled in Harry's chest and spread through him. He nodded, exhilarated. Jason patted his shoulder, then let his gaze sweep across the celebrating crowd to where the ministry officials were gathered. Fudge was still arguing, red-faced with panic. Around him were faces of confusion and disarray. A small curve touched Jason's lips. The dam of the old world had been breached. Next would come a deluge. He saw himself standing on the crest of its waves. High in the stands, representatives from other magical nations traded looks of stunned complexity. They knew this had not been a mere school contest. It had been a demonstration of civilization. From this day, the name City of Dawn would spread like wildfire, rippling through every corner of the magical world. The ancient families, the traditional powers, the stubborn elders clinging to centuries-old rules would be forced to open their eyes and reassess everything. They had witnessed a new era being born, an era of the arcane, of absolute power. Against it, those who still clung to traditional magic seemed destined to be ground to dust by history. 285, Ball Invitation and Invisible Investigation. In the days after the dragon trial, Hogwarts was charged with a strange, reverent hush. Students lowered their voices as they passed one another in the corridors, replaying the event in awed whispers. Harry Potter, once just the boy who lived, had been recast in everyone's imagination as something close to legend. The names City of Dawn and Arcane began to surface in casual conversation, becoming, for a time, a new buzzword among the pupils. Before anyone could settle into that new reality, Professor McGonagall changed the whole school's mood with one announcement in Transfiguration. She rapped her wand on the desk until the murmurs died and cleared her throat. I have an announcement. According to the Triwizard tradition, we will hold a grand Christmas ball, the Yule Ball, on Christmas night. The classroom erupted. Girls squealed and began whispering about dresses and hairstyles. The boys exchanged anxious looks. All students from fourth year upward may attend, McGonagall continued. Younger students may go only by invitation from an older student. Her gaze swept the room and rested on Harry. As the Hogwarts champions, Mr. Potter and Mr. Diggory must attend and must find partners. It is tradition. Harry felt the hair on his neck prickle. He would have preferred facing a Hungarian horntail than dancing before the whole school. Professor, Ron blurted, half hysterical, do we have to dance? McGonagall nodded. Yes, Mr. Weasley. The ball is not mere entertainment. It is part of the tournament, a chance for each school to show itself. After class, the castle buzzed. Corridors filled with nervy boys and excited girls. The bolder lads were already asking girls out, others huddled to plot strategies. Harry and Ron, both looking grim, made for the library. I'd rather fight a dragon again, Harry muttered. At least then I know what to expect. Ron agreed. And now every girl's talking about partners and dresses. Who's going to ask us to dance? They reached the library entrance and saw Victor Krum standing there with a bouquet, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Krum pushed the door open and strode straight to a girl in the corner, Hermione. Miss Granger, he said in heavily accented English, holding out the flowers. Would you honor me as my partner for the Yule Ball? The library fell silent to watch. Hermione looked up, briefly at Krum and then at the bouquet. She smiled politely and shook her head. Thank you, Mr. Krum, but I already have a partner. A shadow of disappointment crossed Krum's face, but he bowed with dignity. I understand. I wish you a pleasant evening. He left, and as he passed Harry and Ron, they could see how dejected he felt. She already has a partner? Ron whispered, stunned. Is it Jason? Before Harry could reply, the answer arrived. Jason Lester entering the library. He still carried that cool, indifferent bearing. White hair, composed golden eyes, a simple black robe that somehow made everyone draw breath. He walked to Hermione's table and stopped. His voice, when he spoke, was soft but clear. Hermione, as mistress of the City of Dawn, will you accompany me to this mortal ball? The phrase landed like lightning. Mistress of the City of Dawn? The students stared, mouths open. Hermione's face blossomed with a brilliant, real smile. She seemed to glow. I would be honored, she said, and then nodded again more emphatically. Jason held out his hand. She put hers in it without hesitation. It was more than an invitation. It was a public announcement, a formal confirmation. From that moment, the wizarding world would know that Hermione Granger, the gifted witch from a Muggle family, stood beside the master of the City of Dawn. Around the library, reactions scattered between envy, shock, heartbreak, and quiet tears. Harry and Ron watched from the doorway, their emotions tangled, glad for their friend, yet aware that Hermione had stepped into a place they could not follow. Meanwhile, in Jason's study deep within the castle, a graver conversation was unfolding. Dumbledore sat in an armchair with a cup of tea, his face bearing that familiar, serene smile. Jason stood before a vast enchanted map that marked every corner of Hogwarts and the location of each person within it. Our surveillance of Moody has been going on for weeks, Jason said. He's cautious and leaves almost no fault line. Dumbledore nodded. Barty Crouch is a clever man. Even driven mad, his guile should not be underestimated. We need a breakthrough, Jason said, frowning. We can't reveal his true nature with only magic and mundane surveillance. The study door opened quietly and Severus Snape entered, his expression uncharacteristically grave. "Headmaster." "Severus," Jason said, turning. "Any findings?" A complicated light flashed in Snape's dark eyes. "The breath of spiritual poison meditation I practice sharpens my sensitivity to abnormal magical auras and disruptions of the soul," he said slowly. "For several weeks I have been watching Moody." Jason and Dumbledore leaned forward. "I perceived a continuously and expertly concealed sense of soul dislocation," Snape went on, "like a bottle labeled healing potion, but hiding deadly poison." Dumbledore's brows drew together. "Are you certain?" "Certain," Snape replied, "especially when he draws from that small flask. The dislocation flickers then. That's not an ordinary invigorating draught. It's more like a potion that suppresses and preserves a disguise." A smile crossed Jason's face, one born of vindication. Snape had picked up what neither wards nor wards of surveillance had shown. "The Yule Ball will be an ideal opportunity," Jason said. "People let their guard down at a ball. We can observe Professor Moody close up, in an environment where he believes himself relaxed." Dumbledore smiled. "Yes, if he truly is Barty Crouch, his reaction when he sees you and Hermione together will be instructive." Snape regarded them both, a note of skepticism in his tone. "Jason, what exactly are you planning to do at the ball?" Jason moved to the window and looked out over the Black Lake. A hard, dangerous light gleamed in his eyes. "I intend to give our guest an unforgettable surprise." In a corner of the study, the small figure of the Zero puppet sat silently, its crimson eyes recording every nuance of the conversation. The Yule Ball would not be only a social event. It would be a stage where hidden plots and secrets could no longer hide. And Jason intended to be the master of that stage. 286. Undercurrents on the eve of the prom. The moment word of the ball spread through Hogwarts, the castle erupted. In the Gryffindor common room, chaos mixed with excitement and a good deal of misery. Harry and Ron slumped on the sofa by the fire, looking exhausted and defeated. "I'd rather face 10 more Hungarian horntails," Harry muttered, burying his face in his hands. "At least those I know how to deal with." "Exactly," Ron agreed, letting out a long, hopeless sigh. "Look at everyone. Dresses, hair, partners. Who'd want to dance with us?" Before he quite finished, Ron straightened as if making a sudden decision and pushed through the gathering of girls to where Fleur Delacour was talking with Lavender Brown. "Miss Delacour," he went beet red and stammered. Would you do me the honor of being my dance partner?" Fleur turned, silver blue eyes appraising him for a second. "Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Weasley," she said in her soft, accented English. "But I already have a date." Ron's face flushed a deeper crimson. He shuffled back to the sofa, head bowed. "It's over," he sighed as he collapsed. "I'll never find a partner in my life." The news grew worse. Neville Longbottom had somehow managed to ask Ginny Weasley to the ball, and she had said yes. Ron's eyes widened as he watched his sister chatter excitedly with Neville. "Neville? Ginny? How could she?" Harry put a hand on his friend's shoulder, feeling the same queasy little knot he knew all too well. Even Neville had a dance partner. It was almost embarrassing that they, one the boy who lived, and the other the friend who had stood beside him through the tournament, were fretting over something so small after all they'd faced in the Triwizard tournament. Down in the Slytherin dungeons, the mood was very different. Draco Malfoy lounged in the best armchair, flanked by a few attentive classmates. "Draco," Blaise Zabini asked quietly, leaning forward, "do you think Lester will show anything new from that City of Dawn at the ball?" Draco smiled, smug and slow. "Wait and see." "The master never does anything without reason," he added lazily. "There'll be something worth watching." Pansy Parkinson edged closer, cheeks flushed. "Draco, will you ask me to dance?" He nodded distractedly, though his attention grazed the room beyond. Around him, a new current was forming. Several old pure-blood families were suddenly eager to flatter Malfoy, trying to hitch themselves to the rising influence he represented. Others seethed at the family's turn, but kept their complaints private. "I heard the Knots are planning to invest in the floating city," Goyle grunted to Crabbe. "And the Greengrasses," Crabbe replied. "Their people were at Malfoy Manor yesterday." The gossip reached Draco's ears in a steady stream, but he tapped idly on the armrest and said nothing. A new circle was assembling at Hogwarts, and he was already its figurehead. At the Ministry of Magic, tension hummed in the air. Cornelius Fudge paced his office while Dolores Umbridge and the man everyone thought was Mad-Eye Moody, Barty Crouch in disguise, sat across from him. "We have to face facts," Fudge finally said, brow creasing. "What Lester brought in some respects goes beyond what we know of magic." Saying that was almost an admission of impotence. Umbridge cleared her throat in a carefully officious way. "Minister, I suggest we send a few special observers to Hogwarts for the Christmas ball." "Observers?" Fudge looked intrigued. "Officially, it's to protect our international guests," Umbridge said with saccharine politeness. "Unofficially, it gives us an opportunity to legally examine and sample Lester's technology." Fudge brightened. "Excellent. If we can get samples, our experts may be able to unravel whatever arcane secrets are at work." "Indeed," the man posing as Moody rumbled, giving a small approving sound. Inside his mind, however, Barty Crouch Jr. was thinking different thoughts. The ball would be a golden chance. Not for the Ministry, but for his true master. He needed to watch Jason Lester closely, learn his weaknesses, and prepare for what was coming. "We must be discreet," he said in the gruff voice he used as a disguise. "Lester won't be naive. He'll sense anything obvious." "Yes, Moody is right," Fudge agreed emphatically. "We must be extremely careful." After the meeting, Barty Crouch remained alone. He uncorked an always-present flask and swallowed a gulp of polyjuice potion, the liquid burning down his throat. He showed no expression as he endured the sting. Soon. Everything would happen soon. The Dark Lord's return was near, and the City of Dawn was only a stepping stone. That same night, scattered through the castle, other minds turned over the approaching dance. Beauxbatons and Durmstrang students still carried shadows from the first task. Fleur stood before a mirror, fingertips trailing over the faint marks left by the trial, eyes uncertain. Victor Crumb sat alone by his bed, methodically polishing his wand with a concentration that left him silent. At the staff table, Professor McGonagall stared at plans for the Great Hall's decorations and could not quite settle her thoughts. Snape, in his dungeon office, watched the darkened shelves in the corridor beyond as if something there might step out. Dumbledore sat in the headmaster's office, gazing at the portrait-lined walls and keeping his feelings neatly behind half-moon spectacles. One by one, the castle lights dimmed and silence settled over the towers. A grand ball waited on the morrow, gilded, glittering, and threaded through with currents that none of those attending fully understood. 287. A grand debut on prom night. It was Christmas Eve. The Great Hall had been transformed into a winter dreamscape. 12 towering Christmas trees, heavy with silver ornaments and floating candles, conjured snowflakes drifting slowly through the air and melting just before they could settle in anyone's hair. The enchanted ceiling was a star-studded sky, so vivid it seemed the whole hall had been set adrift in the cosmos. The long house tables had been replaced by hundreds of small round tables draped in snow-white cloths and set with gleaming silver and sparkling crystal. In the center, a dance floor of smooth marble caught and reflected a soft, magical light. Students filed in, dressed to the nines. Harry wore a deep green formal robe and felt awkward not knowing what to do with his hands. Still, he looked far more grown-up than usual. His partner was Parvati Patil, resplendent in pink, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Relax, Harry," she patted his arm. "You fought a dragon? Are you afraid of dancing?" Harry forced a smile that looked more like a grimace and shook his head. "Honestly, I'd rather fight a dragon again." Behind them came Ron with Padma. Ron's deep blue robe showed signs of being hand-me-down, patched at the edges, but Mrs. Weasley had made it look respectable. "Oh my goodness." Ron's eyes were wide and his mouth hung open. "This place, it's over the top." Gasps and murmurs rose and fell around the hall. Cedric Diggory and Cho Chang entered arm in arm, polished and confident. Fleur Delacour floated in a silver-blue gown with Roger Davies at her side. Victor Crumb arrived with a Beauxbaton chaperone. He kept up a courteous air, though his face betrayed disappointment. Then the chatter faded abruptly. It was as if a spell had frozen everyone in place. Every head turned to the entrance. Jason Lester stood there, hand in hand with Hermione Granger, and for an instant the world seemed to go still. Jason's deep blue robe wasn't merely fabric, but like a living slice of the night sky, stars flickering and shifting across it with the rise and fall of his breath. His hair was white as fresh snow, and his golden eyes shone startlingly bright against that dark backdrop. Hermione was breathtaking. The Weasley brothers had made her dress, an arcane creation of silver white that looked at once like silk and polished metal. In the light, the gown seemed covered with running moonlight. The hem was embroidered with delicate runes that lit up one after another as she walked, then gently dimmed, waves of living light trailing behind her. Her hair was carefully styled and pinned with an arcane crystal, a few playful curls framing her face, noble and lively all at once. They moved as if they absorbed every glint of light around them. The girls in the crowd stared at Hermione with a mix of jealousy and yearning. None of them had seen anything so beautiful. Hermione, she's simply... Lavender Brown covered her mouth, voice trembling. That dress, Parvati breathed. The runes, they're alive. The boys were dumbstruck, half in awe and half embarrassed to meet Jason's gaze. Even the professors were stirred. McGonagall's proud smile was thin and bright. Snape's expression remained severe, but his eyes lingered on Hermione's skirt an extra heartbeat. Dumbledore smiled and nodded, eyes full of relief and warmth. Victor Crumb's features tightened, shock, envy, resignation. He slumped as if accepting something inevitable. He understood then that he had never truly stood a chance. It wasn't that he hadn't tried. Hermione's heart had long ago been given to someone otherworldly. Jason Lester, the man who had built the City of Dawn, the one who had stood before a dragon like a god. Only such an existence seemed worthy of her. Dumbledore stepped to the center of the dance floor and tapped his wand to his throat so his voice carried. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "welcome to the Hogwarts Christmas Ball. As is tradition, the first dance will be opened by our champions." He smiled at the Triwizard champions. "Champions and your partners, please come to the center of the dance floor." Harry swallowed and, trying to look brave, followed Parvati into the center. Cedric and Cho, Fleur and Roger, Crumb and his partner moved forward as well. Jason and Hermione made their way toward the VIP section reserved for them, where Dumbledore, the other school's heads, and ministry officials were seated. A graceful waltz began. Harry's limbs felt stiff, but Parvati's patient guidance kept him from stepping on her toes. The dragon task had given him a steadier nerve than he'd expected. Cedric and Cho glided beautifully, drawing applause. Fleur and Roger were less coordinated, but Fleur's beauty more than made up for it. Crumb danced like a big, awkward bear, entirely dependent on his partner's patience. Most eyes, though, kept slipping back to the VIP area. Even seated, Jason and Hermione were the center of attention. "When will they dance?" A Beauxbatons girl whispered to her companion. "I want to see them dance," the companion replied, nodding. When the opening dance finished, Dumbledore rose again. "Now," he said, arms open, "let us all enjoy this wonderful evening." The music quickened, students poured onto the floor, and the ball was fully underway. Then Jason rose and extended his hand to Hermione. "Would you care to dance with me?" he asked softly, looking at her. Hermione's smile lit her face, and she placed her hand in his. "My pleasure." They walked to the center, and the crowd instinctively made way. The music seemed to slow, becoming more soulful. When they began to dance, it was as if two perfectly synchronized parts of a single being had found each other. They moved without the need for constant eye contact. Every step of Jason's was controlled, every turn of Hermione's weightless. Hermione's skirt fanned in a wide spin, and the runes along its hem left long, flickering trails like shooting stars that arced across the dance floor. Jason's starry robe swirled with her, that deep cosmos moving in time. The great hall fell utterly silent, everything else blurred into the background. When the music's final note faded, the hall erupted. Thunderous applause and cheering filled the air. Some girls had tears in their eyes. Jason and Hermione bowed, smiled, and hand in hand, returned to their seats beneath a storm of admiring looks. But beneath the splendor, there were quieter currents. In a corner, several people who identified themselves as ministry observers whispered to one another, their glances toward Jason complicated and intense. Barty Crouch Jr., disguised as Mad-Eye Moody, had his ever-rolling magical eye fixed on Jason. Snape, seated at the staff table, watched the students with a casual air, but kept a careful eye on Moody. A sense of displacement, of something not quite fitting, had lingered since Jason's arrival. Whenever Moody lifted his small hip flask for a drink, that feeling flickered briefly, as if reality itself had shuddered. As the night deepened, the ball grew wilder and more joyful. Students surrendered themselves to music and dance, setting aside homework and worry. On the glittering floor, love and beauty reigned, if only for a night. For Jason and Hermione, this evening had become their most brilliant chapter yet, a night that would be remembered in the annals of Hogwarts. 288. Political undercurrents on the dance floor. The ball was in full swing. Music rose, skirts swirled, a picture of celebration and prosperity. But beneath the glittering chandeliers, unseen blades had only just begun to cross. Cornelius Fudge, glass of champagne in hand, pushed his corpulent frame through the crowd with the practiced smile of a seasoned politician. He appeared to be exchanging pleasantries with representatives from across the wizarding world, but his words were a private, quiet campaign. "Mr. Brown," he murmured, leaning close to a stern, middle-aged pureblood from Wales. His voice was low enough that only the two of them could hear. "Are you satisfied with tonight's demonstration?" Mr. Brown's gaze flicked over Fudge's shoulder to where Jason and Hermione spoke in a corner, then returned. He spoke cautiously. "It was an eye-opener, Minister." "Yes, an eye-opener." Fudge's tone tightened. "But don't you think a power like that is dangerous?" Mr. Brown's posture stiffened. "What do you mean, Minister?" Fudge checked that no one was close enough to overhear and dropped his voice almost to a whisper. "Imagine what would happen if such a thing were misused. The Ministry's authority, the standing of our great families, the safety of the magical world." He let the words hang. "We must unite to make sure it does not spiral out of control." Mr. Brown's reply was measured, and it landed like a cold splash on Fudge's hopes. "With respect, Minister, what Mr. Lester demonstrated exceeded our imaginations. Precisely for that reason, confrontation may be unwise. Cooperation is the wiser course." He regarded Fudge with something like pity. "Times have changed. We must change with them." Fudge's smile froze. It was the fifth soft rebuff of the evening. Whether domestic purebloods or foreign delegations, people spoke of Jason with an instinctive deference. No one wanted to oppose him openly. Across the room, a conspicuous splash of pink writhed through the crowd. Dolores Umbridge, in a sugary gown and a smile worn like armor, drifted toward a circle of Beauxbaton students. Her eyes never left Jason as she sought an angle. "Mr. Lester is very promising, isn't he?" she purred. "Yes, madam," a polite French girl answered, "like a prince from a fairy tale." Umbridge nodded and tilted the conversation. "But don't you think his relationship with Miss Granger is unusual? A wizard of such power linked with a muggle-born companion, rather unconventional for old pure-blood sensibilities." Her implication hung heavy. The young girls exchanged baffled looks. One blurted, "That's romantic." "Love doesn't care about blood," another said. "And Miss Granger is exceptional. She deserves anyone," the first added. Umbridge's smile froze as if carved in sugar. Her manipulative barbs fell flat against simple admiration. By contrast, Lucius Malfoy's circle thrummed. In immaculate dark blue and leaning on his snake-headed cane, he moved among the influential with effortless grace. "Mr. Knott," he said to a stiff, aristocratic man, "delighted to see you." The father of Theodore Knott regarded Lucius with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Lucius." Lucius's smile deepened. "You know we've made some bold choices lately." "And they've proven wise?" the man asked. "Our investments in the City of Dawn have already yielded returns unlike anything our family has seen," Lucius said, letting the bait settle. "And this is only the beginning." Mr. Knott's breathing quickened. "You mean, a new era has arrived," Lucius said, voice smooth as silk. "Read beyond the headlines. Those who cling to the old rules will be crushed." He looked past Knott toward Jason and Hermione with genuine reverence. "The young master brings not only unprecedented power, but the wisdom to change things. Aligning with him is how old families will survive." Mr. Knott was silent for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Perhaps we should discuss this more formally." Lucius allowed himself a faint, private triumph. "It would be my pleasure. I can introduce you to the opportunities in the City of Dawn." At the ballroom center, Draco Malfoy whirled Pansy Parkinson with practiced poise of someone far older than 14. Pansy nodded toward Fudge. "Look at him. He seems very unhappy." "Of course he's unhappy," Draco answered, a cold smile touching his lips. Everything he knew is collapsing. He spun Pansy into another turn and continued in a softer, ardent tone. That's the reality, Pansy. The old order must give way to new power. Those who refuse to change will be crushed. Pansy gazed up at him with open admiration. You've changed so much, Draco. The young master changed me, Draco replied, the word master carrying unnerving devotion. He's shown me what true power and vision look like. Tonight's ball isn't just a celebration, it's a political statement. A new era is being declared. As the night wore on, more conservative families edged toward the Malfoy orbit. The Greengrass Patriarch sought Lucius out. Mr. Malfoy, we should talk. Of course, Lucius replied, already weaving possibilities. Blaise Zabini's mother glided over as well. I hear the City of Dawn is looking for partners? We partner only with the forward-thinking, Lucius said with a polite but pointed tone. The implication was clear. Commitment and foresight were required for entry. In the shadowed edge of the room, a hulking figure, Alastair Moody, or so he appeared, remained still. Barty Crouch Jr., hidden beneath Polyjuice and the madman's outerness, watched Jason with a whirring magical eye. He searched for weakness, any slip of emotion, any fracture to exploit. He noticed Jason's protective attention toward Hermione, the obvious depth between them. Interesting, he hissed inwardly. Even gods have human weaknesses. He drew a small flask, drank another bitter mouthful of polyjuice to maintain the disguise, and tightened his grasp on patience. The potion tasted foul, but he would endure it until his plan reached its moment. At the teacher's table, Severus Snape sat like a shadow. He feigned interest in the young waltzers, but kept an eye on Moody. Years spent cultivating the breath of spiritual poison, an attunement to malice, had made him finely tuned to intent. From the fake auror, Snape felt a coldness that suggested something far darker than ordinary watchfulness. When that magical eye swung toward Jason and Hermione, the malevolence became nearly tangible. How interesting, Snape thought. A real auror would not watch students the way this man did. He shifted his posture, sliding into a position from which he could act in an instant. As the evening deepened, political currents split into clearer channels. Support for Jason swelled. Opponents shrank and found themselves increasingly isolated. Those who had hoped to stay neutral finally realized that in the coming storm, neutrality might be the most dangerous stance. Fudge's efforts to rally allies had produced little. Umbridge's sniffing provocations had become almost comical. Lucius's maneuvers, however, were strikingly effective. Beneath the polite alliances and whispered promises, real danger approached. Barty Crouch Jr.'s plan was set. It needed only an opening. He did not know that Snape watched him like a coiled spring. He did not know that, from the very beginning, his disguise had been translucent to Jason's eyes. The ball itself had become a trap, and the intended prey were walking, one by one, into a carefully woven net. Jason and Hermione stayed at the center of the dance floor, their movements and private looks broadcasting a single truth. A new world was coming, and they intended to be its masters. After this night, the wizarding world would not be the same. 289. Affectionate Confession under the Astronomical Tower. The ball was alive with music and laughter, but Jason quietly took Hermione's hand. Want to find somewhere quiet to hide? He whispered, his warm breath brushing her earlobe. It's too noisy in there. Hermione looked up. The ballroom lights shimmered in her brown eyes. Okay. They exchanged a guilty, childlike grin and slipped away from the crowd, winding their way toward the astronomy tower. The air at the top was much cooler, carrying the night's dampness and a gentle breeze. Above them, the sky was a black velvet scatter of stars. Far off, the City of Dawn floated like a jewel, its arcane lights twinkling and playing hide-and-seek with the true stars. They stood side by side on the tower, Hogwarts aglow below them, and the silent line of distant mountains beyond. The music from the Great Hall floated up, now faint and unreal, as if it belonged to another world. It's beautiful, Hermione breathed, eyes fixed on the floating city. Jason stood beside her, the night wind lifting his snow-white hair. Yes, very beautiful. He said it softly, but his gaze never left her profile. Hermione inhaled the cool air, her eyes softened. Sometimes, I feel like I'm dreaming. Her voice came out thin on the wind. A year ago, I was just an ordinary muggle witch. My biggest worries were homework and exams. She turned back to the City of Dawn, its lights reflected in her pupils. And now, I'm standing here with you, looking over the magic world, the city of dawn, arcane power, things I never even dared imagine. She met Jason's eyes, eyes that held a fragile disbelief. Can I really hold all of this? Jason reached out and cupped her cold hand in his. His palm was warm, and that warmth spread from her skin to her chest, settling something that had been restless. This isn't a dream, Hermione, he said, seriously. This is the reality we've made, and this is only the beginning. The steady warmth of his hand calmed her. She couldn't help smiling. You're always like this, making me believe in the impossible. Because with me, nothing is impossible, he answered, especially when I'm with you. He let go and turned to face her fully. Moonlight trimmed his silhouette, and his golden eyes seemed to deepen in the night. Hermione, there are things I need to tell you. He spoke plainly. Before I met you, I thought I'd walk this path alone to the end. He paused, as if picturing a long, solitary road. I had goals, plans, the means to reach them. I thought that was enough. Hermione listened, her heart beating faster, unsteady. But after I met you, I realized greatness isn't about what one person can conquer, it's about what you can share, he went on. It's not standing alone on a mountaintop and looking down. It's holding someone's hand and building a world for both of you. His thumb brushed her cheek, causing a faint electric thrill. You showed me what completeness is, what happiness is. His gaze darkened, as if peering through the present into a distant future. Hermione, I want to make you a promise. His voice took on a solemn, almost sacred tone. When I reach the fourth-tier divine level, I will share half of my eternity with you. Hermione's breath caught. We'll watch the world change together and uncover secrets no one else knows, he continued, voice low and compelling. Together, we'll watch civilizations rise and fall, stars ignite and fade, the universe begin anew, again and again. He took her hands, a burning light in his eyes. Whether it's 100 years, 1,000, or lifetimes beyond lifetimes, I want you by my side. Warmth filled Hermione until her vision blurred. These were not tears of sorrow, but of an overwhelming, overflowing joy. Jason. She couldn't keep the tears in. They slipped down like pearls. I do. She looked up at him. Whether it's a year, 10 years, or lifetimes upon lifetimes, I'll be with you. Her voice steadied. I want to build a new world with you. I want to face anything with you. I want to see how vast the universe really is with you. She paused, then smiled so brightly it lit her whole face. I want to be your partner, your comrade, your eternity. As if in answer, something miraculous happened. Their magic, drawn by an invisible thread, began to synchronize. Jason's star-patterned robe stirred without wind. Constellations along the fabric winked to life, swirling. The runes stitched into Hermione's dress flickered in turn, echoing the light on his robe. The air around them changed, filled with a sweet, heady scent, love made tangible. Even the stars above seemed to shimmer more brightly. Jason closed the distance between them and pulled Hermione gently into his arms. I love you, Hermione, he murmured, his lips nearly touching hers. I love you too, Jason, she replied, eyes closing. Under the gaze of countless stars, their lips met. The kiss was light and soft, yet carried the weight of every promise. For a moment, time held its breath. The world shrank to 2 heartbeats and 2 breaths. When they parted, Hermione's cheeks were flushed and her eyes glistened. This feeling, she whispered, it's like I'm alive all over. Jason looked at the girl in his arms and nodded. Yes, a new beginning. From tonight, we are one. He turned and stared toward the city of dawn. That will be our home. Our story will be written there. They stood in silence, side by side, gazing at the floating city. After a while, Hermione asked, what do you think our future will be like? Jason tilted his head, thoughtful. We'll turn this world on its head, he said simply. We'll make new laws, build new civilizations, go where no one has gone before. He looked back into her eyes. But the most important thing is we'll be together. No matter what horrors we face, no matter what hardships come, we'll face them together. Hermione squeezed his hand back with absolute certainty. We can do it, she said, because we have each other. A distant bell reminded them that the ball still went on below. Time to go back, Jason said. Hermione hummed and nodded, her eyes still shining with that impossible happiness. Tonight was enough, she said. They took each other's hands and began to walk down the winding stone staircase. Moonlight stretched their shadows long across the steps, intertwining them, shadows that, in their minds and hearts, would never be separated again. 290. The end of the ball and Snape's discovery. When Jason and Hermione returned to the Great Hall hand in hand, almost everyone's attention fixed on them. Something between them had shifted. Their expressions were soft with sweetness. The satisfaction and joy in their faces seemed to glow, making those around them a little breathless. Harry noticed first. They look different, he murmured, nudging Ron. Ron blinked, mouth half full of cake, and nodded vaguely. He had always been slow with matters of the heart, but even he could see the intimacy between Jason and Hermione was deeper than before. Yeah, like more complete, he said after a struggle for the right word, oddly unsettled, as if something important had slipped away from him. Parvati and Lavender, though, had sharper radars. The moment Hermione stepped into the hall, they exchanged a knowing look. Hermione, she looks. Parvati's voice was blunt with envy. So happy. It's pouring out of her, Lavender agreed, nodding seriously. Across the crowd, Draco Malfoy had not taken his eyes off them. As Jason's faithful follower, every gesture of his master set his nerves on edge. It seems Master and Miss Granger have taken a big step, he whispered to Pansy. A hint of admiration showed in Pansy's face. They really suit each other. A match made in heaven. Draco stored everything like a dutiful scribe, planning to report it to his father later. Any information about the Master mattered to House Malfoy. As the night drew on, the music dwindled and the Yule Ball came to a close. Dumbledore stepped up onto the raised platform, tapped his wand at his throat, and his voice filled the great hall. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's Yule Ball has come to an end. Thank you all for coming. I hope you had an unforgettable evening. Please leave in an orderly fashion and be careful on your way. Students drifted out in twos and threes, faces still flushed with the lingering joy of the evening and talking about the night's most dazzling pair. Honestly, best ball ever. That dance, Jason and Hermione, wow, I could watch it forever. The crowd dispersed, but different corners of the hall wore very different moods. Fudge left ashen-faced, practically running. Tonight's humiliation had shaken him worse than expected. Umbridge followed, her toad-like expression full of fury. Her scheming had turned her into a joke. Only Lucius Malfoy walked slowly, an unhurried smile on his lips. Tonight had brought unprecedented prestige and allies to his house. At that moment, a calm, unruffled voice slipped directly into Lucius's and Draco's minds, an echo from the soul contract. From now on, you need no longer call me Master. Call me Young Master or Young Lord. Father and son paused, exchanged a barely perceptible look, each recognizing a flicker of shock and warmth in the other. That respect carried more weight than any command. Their loyalty deepened. As final groups left, Severus Snape slid out from a shadow by a stone pillar and moved toward Jason like a ghost. He waited until they were alone before coming close. Jason, he said in a low, urgent tone, I have something important to report. Jason glanced around, inclined his head. Follow me. A few minutes later, they were in Jason's laboratory. My cultivation of the breath of spiritual poison makes me especially sensitive to abnormal magical fluctuations, Snape began, direct and brisk. That Moody, ever since he first arrived, has given me a persistent sense of soul displacement. Jason listened, motionless, signaling for him to continue. This feeling never entirely goes away, Snape went on, but crucially, whenever he opens that little flask and drinks from it, the displacement calms, briefly, almost imperceptibly. He paused. I analyzed the scent of the residue in the flask. It's polyjuice blended with potions of the dark arts designed to suppress the drinker's true personality. Jason didn't show surprise. Instead, he regarded Snape with a measured approval. Very perceptive, he said. Your breath of spiritual poison has improved greatly. He moved to the window and stared out into the deep night. So who do you think this fake Moody is? Snape studied for a beat. Given the barely concealed malice he directs at you and Miss Granger, I'd say he's your enemy. To impersonate Alastor Moody so perfectly and slip into Hogwarts would require exceptional skill and considerable outside support. I suspect he's a Death Eater. Jason turned, meeting Snape's eyes. Your assessment is accurate. But we shouldn't expose him, Snape said suddenly, brow furrowing. Why not? I want to see what his handlers plan. Jason's voice cooled. Let him continue. We'll watch from the shadows. He tapped the table with a finger. I have a strong feeling the second task is when they'll make a move. Continue monitoring that imposter. Be very careful not to be discovered, he instructed. Record every abnormal action, especially all his contacts. Snape nodded. Understood. Have Draco keep an eye on the Ministry. Watch Fudge and Umbridge closely. Jason added. I'll make technical preparations for the second task. If my premonition is right, it won't be straightforward. He set to work at a complex magical device. I'll also set up monitoring arrays around the castle. Any disturbance will be alerted immediately. He looked back at Snape. And be extra cautious. Whoever could infiltrate Hogwarts like this must have considerable backing. I will, Snape said. After Snape left, Jason stood alone in the lab. Barty Crouch Jr.'s plot, the threat of Voldemort's resurrection, everything lay clear before him. He didn't plan to stop the momentum. He intended to use it to cleanse the corrupt elements of the magical world. Let the storm rage, he murmured. The laboratory door opened quietly, and Hermione slipped in. She had changed out of her gown and now wore a soft nightdress. A glow of happiness still lingered on her face. Still busy? She asked as she moved to his side. Jason put his arm around her and drew her close, resting his chin on her head. Just finished a small matter, he said. Professor Snape found something interesting. Hermione settled into his arms. It's about Professor Moody, isn't it? Jason glanced down at her, surprised. You noticed? Hermione nodded against him. The way he looks at us, especially at you, it's not the look of a professor. Jason chuckled and ruffled her hair. My clever girl. Don't worry, it's all under control. They held each other in the quiet after the ball, savoring the calm. Tonight was wonderful, Hermione mumbled into his chest. It was, Jason agreed, but it's only the beginning. We have a long road ahead. He looked up at the stars beyond the window. The days to come could be dangerous. Hermione tightened her arms around him. Whatever happens, I'll be with you. Late at night, Hogwarts slept, but under the surface currents moved. The imposter Moody sat alone in his office, grinning savagely as he stared at his flask. Snape, far below, meticulously labeled bottles of potion, his expression unreadable. Draco, back in the Slytherin common room, hurriedly recorded everything he'd learned that evening with a precise quill. And at the very top, in the highest laboratory, Jason and Hermione slept in each other's arms. This night marked a turning point. The prelude to a shifting tide in the magical world had already begun. 291. The conspiracy of the second mission begins to emerge. The first weekend after the Christmas holidays, the Great Hall at Hogwarts was packed and buzzing. Students and professors alike waited for one announcement, the details of the Triwizard Tournament's second task. Ludo Bagman climbed the high platform like an overexcited rooster, face flushed with glee. Ladies and gentlemen, his booming voice filled the hall. After such a long wait, we can finally reveal the second task. He cleared his throat, unrolled a parchment, and read on. The second task will be held on February 24th, and the location is our very own Black Lake. He paused for effect while whispers rippled through the room. The champions must dive to the bottom of the Black Lake within 1 hour, retrieve what is most precious to them, and bring it back. The hall erupted in speculation. What could "what is most precious" mean? Bagman enjoyed the reaction and raised his voice even louder. To ensure fairness and add to the challenge, we have arranged 4 hostages. He announced them one by one with theatrical flourish. Miss Cho Chang, companion to Cedric Diggory. Miss Gabrielle Delacour, sister to Fleur Delacour. Miss Hermione Granger, companion to Victor Crumb. The moment Hermione's name rang out, Jason's expression went cold. His fingers stopped tapping on the table. Hermione, sitting beside him, noticed and met his eyes. Bagman concluded, and Mr. Ron Weasley, best friend to Harry Potter. Bagman rolled up his parchment, pleased with the reaction. These 4 will be taken to the bottom of the lake and will await rescue. They will be in no danger. We've put the best protective measures in place, so rest assured. Jason's face darkened. The task itself might not have been a problem, but Hermione named as a hostage made it feel wrong, especially with the fake Moody prowling about, his malice plain as day. Someone was trying to stir trouble. Hermione looked uneasy. Jason lowered his voice. It's all right. I won't let anyone so much as hurt a hair on your head. She nodded. She trusted him. She could also feel the dangerous edge in him, the mood that came when a threat was near. That afternoon, Jason went alone to the Black Lake. Ostensibly, he was preparing for the task. In truth, he was probing the depths. "Zero, deep scan," he ordered. "Scanning. Complete," Zero answered in his head. "Abnormal, magical signatures detected." Jason frowned. "Be specific," Zero replied, its tone clinical. "A powerful dark arts array has been placed in a region on the lakebed. The array is highly corrosive and aggressive, lethal to living organisms." A flash of murderous intent crossed Jason's face. It was clear now. Someone intended Hermione, to encounter that array during the task, to be badly injured or killed. If they couldn't get at him directly, they'd strike through her. "Who planted it?" he asked. "Based on residual magic approximately 1 month ago," Zero said. "The array is buried deep in the mud. It cannot be detected without a deep scan." A month ago, around the time the fake Moody arrived. To lay such an array under Hogwarts protections required dark arts mastery and an inside hand. Barty Crouch Jr. masquerading as Moody and whatever dark hand was behind him. They had gone to great lengths. That evening, Jason convened a small, tense meeting in his study. Present were Harry, Hermione, Dumbledore, and Snape. "I found something," Jason said without preamble, and he laid Zero's scan across the table. "The bottom of the Black Lake has been tampered with." When he said dark arts array, Dumbledore's clear blue eyes dimmed. "A dark arts array," the headmaster repeated quietly. "Extremely dangerous. If activated, the consequences could be catastrophic." Snape's face darkened. "To establish an array like this at Hogwarts, there must be an accomplice inside, and a master of the dark arts behind them." Harry and Hermione didn't fully grasp the technical horrors the two professors understood, but they felt the gravity by their reactions. "Who is the target?" Harry asked. Jason's gaze fell to Hermione. "They're planning to use the task to make Hermione stumble into that array." Hermione's face drained of color. "What will it do?" she whispered. "At best, severe injury. At worst, death," Dumbledore said gravely. "And even survival could leave permanent, untreatable wounds." "This is a sinister plot," he added, pacing. "On the surface, it looks like an accident during competition, but its purpose is lethal." He stopped and looked at Jason. "And they know of your relationship with her. Harming Hermione would be a crushing blow to you." Snape's voice was cold. "That is the kind of cruelty those Death Eaters would pursue. If they cannot defeat you directly, they strike at the person you care about most." Harry clenched his fists. "We have to stop them." Jason shook his head. The room fell silent. "No," he said. The single word was flat. Every face turned to him in disbelief. Hermione's voice trembled. "You want me to take a risk?" Jason took her hand, his eyes burning. "I'm not saying we'll let them hurt you. I'm saying we won't prevent the attempt from going forward." He explained his plan. "If they want a spectacle, we'll give them one, on our terms. We'll lure out whoever is hiding in the dark and finish them in one sweep." Dumbledore regarded him thoughtfully. "What are you planning?" Jason turned, menace coiled under calm. "I'm going to use this opportunity to draw out the rats and exterminate them. They've planted an array. I'll turn it into a noose." Over the next hour, he laid out the details. He would construct a counter-array beside the dark arts array on the lakebed, something that could absorb and redirect the enemy magic back against its source. Hermione would remain the proclaimed hostage, but be fitted with the strongest protections they could devise. When their opponents believed their scheme had worked, that would be the moment to spring the trap and catch them. Dumbledore's concern was plain. "This is dangerous. What if?" "There is no what if," Jason interrupted, voice iron. "I won't give them a chance to harm Hermione." He looked at her, and the hard edge in his voice softened. "Trust me." Hermione met his gaze and after a pause nodded. "I trust you." The meeting ended. Dumbledore set about quietly investigating the mole at Hogwarts. Snape resumed his shadowing of the fake Moody, watching his every move. Harry continued to train openly, keeping up appearances and lulling their enemies into complacency. And Jason began the most vital work, building the counter-array on the lakebed. The device had to withstand the dark arts array and bounce its power back precisely. Any miscalculation could be catastrophic. Over the following days, Hogwarts outwardly stayed calm. Students discussed the upcoming task with growing excitement. Classes went on as usual. Beneath that calm, tension hummed. The fake Moody kept making frequent contacts beyond the school, reporting progress. Snape kept him under close observation. And every night, when the castle quieted, Jason dove into the cold depths of the Black Lake to secretly construct his trap. By the night before February 24th, the counter-array was complete, and Hermione's protections were in place. They had done everything they could. Now they only had to wait for the trap to be sprung. "Tomorrow is the decisive day," Jason said to Hermione. She squeezed his hand. "I'm ready." "No matter what happens," Jason went on, "we face it together." He spoke with unshakable resolve. "Together, and we will win." Hogwarts that night was unusually quiet, an expectant hush. Everyone knew it was the calm before a storm. Dawn would bring a battle that would not be contained to the lake. It would ripple through the wizarding world. Jason planned to make sure those who dared to harm him and Hermione paid a very high price. 292. Deep diving equipment and counterattack preparation. As soon as the task for February 24th was announced, Jason's plan snapped into place. His aim was not only to help Harry win the competition, but to prepare a surprise for the rats skulking in the shadows. That night, the alchemy workshop in the City of Dawn burned with light. "Fred, George," Jason called through the magical comm. 3 days. I need a set of deep-sea combat gear for Harry." The Weasley twins exchanged a look and instantly lit up. "Leave it to us, Jason." Fred rubbed his hands together. "What exactly do you need? Underwater breathing, pressure resistance, magic amplification, and most importantly, protection against dark magic." Jason's voice went cold. "This isn't a toy for a show. This is real combat equipment." George was already sketching designs in the air. "We'll make it the best." For the next 2 days, the twins hardly left the workshop. Using the advanced, never-before-seen materials Jason provided, they fused arcane technology with old-fashioned alchemy to produce something extraordinary. The diving suit's shell was crafted from deep-sea magical beast scales, light, tough, and astonishingly protective after treatment. The lining was woven with scores of miniature arcane cores, supplying continuous magic while automatically regulating pressure and temperature. "This breathing rig, look." Fred pointed to a crystal device on the chest, pride written all over his face. George checked the readouts and gave a thumbs up. 8 hours of pure air, and it filters out stray magical auras in the water. The most crucial element was a protective rune Jason carved himself. It could identify and isolate dark arts automatically, especially those insidious assaults aimed at one's soul. Alongside the deep-sea ranger suit, Jason commissioned an underwater weapon, the Thunder Trident, an artifact that combined lightning and arcane power. Elegant in appearance, it held ferocious electricity within. If Harry wielded it, the trident would resonate with his magic and amplify a lightning strike many times over. Underwater, its power escalated even further, enough to paralyze a giant squid or electrocuting large aquatic beasts until they floated belly up. "The noise this thing makes underwater, terrifying," George murmured as a dummy floated in the test pool. "One strike and even a full-grown squid would be ruined." Fred grinned fanatically. "And it's got auto-lock. Harry only needs to want to hit something, and it locks on." While heaped armaments were prepared for Harry, Jason did not forget Hermione. He remade a purification amulet himself, no longer a simple trinket, but a minor artifact infused with a fraction of his demigod-level power. The amulet was an exquisite crystal pendant sealing concentrated light. If Hermione faced dark magic, it would activate immediately, expanding a field of absolute light protection that not only blocked attacks but purified dark energies nearby. "Wear this. Nothing will get through it." Jason placed the pendant around Hermione's neck. The cold crystal warmed the moment it touched her skin. Even if Lord Voldemort himself attacked, he couldn't break it. A comforting warmth seeped from the pendant into her, and Hermione's unease melted away. She replied softly. Just in case, Jason also arranged special training for Hermione in the floating city's training hall, which he had reconfigured to simulate the Black Lake's bottom, pressure, gravity, and light all replicated. "Underwater, your ice magic grows stronger," he warned, "but it's harder to control." Hermione practiced with sharp focus, learning to condense ice walls quickly, to launch concealed ice spikes, and even to use frost to manipulate water currents. Jason watched, pleased. He taught her several life-saving spells, too. instant teleportation, and heavy-duty energy shields, spells that consumed great power but could save a life in a pinch. "Remember," he said with unusual gravity, "if things go wrong, teleport out immediately. Your safety matters more than any prize." While Jason prepared gear and strategy, Draco was not idle. As the intern director of the City of Dawn's intelligence branch, he used his Slytherin network and his father's influence at the Ministry to dig into leads about the second task. "Young Master, something's wrong," Draco reported quickly. He'd discovered that the Ministry's Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures had been in unusually frequent contact with Hogwarts. They were supposedly discussing environmental modification projects, but everything was top secret. "Officially, it's for the competition's safety," Draco wrote, "but even my father couldn't learn the details. The modifications were done at night, and everyone involved signed non-disclosure agreements. I suspect they tampered with the bottom of the Black Lake," he concluded. When the intelligence reached Jason, a thin line of ice crossed his eyes. It suddenly made sense. The enemy hadn't merely drawn a circle on the lake floor. They'd used the Ministry as a cover, wrapped in official authority. "Well done," Jason commended him. "Keep watching, especially Fudge and Umbridge." "Yes, young master." Draco's reply was short and sure. By the evening of February 23rd, everything was in place. Harry's gear was tuned. Hermione's amulet sat against her chest. Jason stood atop the highest point of the floating city, looking toward the dim silhouette of Hogwarts. Tomorrow the play would begin, but this time the hunter would become Zero. "Final system check," Jason ordered. "All systems normal. Counter-magic arrays deployed. Monitoring covers the entire Black Lake," came the calm reply. "Very good. I want to see what tricks the rats in the gutters can pull." That night, the core team held one last meeting. Harry, Hermione, Dumbledore, Snape, the Weasley twins, and Draco, joined via magical communication, all gathered. "Tomorrow is the showdown," Jason said, scanning each face. "Plan is clear. Final confirmations." He assigned roles with brisk precision. Harry would compete as planned and, when possible, protect the other hostages. Hermione would follow the script, but be ready to switch on a moment's notice. Dumbledore and Snape would watch from the shore, prepared to step in. Draco would continue his intelligence sweep, keeping especially close tabs on Ministry officials. "Remember," Jason added, his voice low and lethal, "our goal isn't to survive this, it's to wipe out these scoundrels in one fell swoop." The meeting broke up, and Hogwarts fell into an uneasy silence, the calm before a storm. In a dim office, the fake Moody was making final adjustments, unaware that every motion was mirrored in Snape's crystal. In the floating city, Jason closed his eyes and summoned the world-altering power he had kept in reserve. Tomorrow he would unleash it. At dawn, the first light speared the surface of the Black Lake. The second task was about to begin. The stands were packed with expectant faces, hungry for spectacle. No one suspected the contest would become a turning point in the history of magic. Jason melted into the crowd like any spectator, but he knew the true battle was only just beginning. Deep beneath the lake, an evil magic circle pulsed with a malevolent aura, waiting for sacrifices. It did not know that a much larger, deadlier net had already been cast unseen around it. When the conspirators thought their victory certain, they would instead be struck by the thunder of a demigod. 293, Lake Trap Cloth, February 24th, midnight. Under the moonlight, the Black Lake lay flat and glassy, without a ripple. But beneath the surface, something was moving. Barty Crouch Jr., wearing Moody's face, slipped out of the castle. His magically rotating eye swept the empty courtyard and confirmed it was safe. He didn't feel Snape's eyes on his back, watching from a deeper shadow. At the lake edge, Barty produced a bottle of polyjuice and drank. Bones crackled, muscles contorted, and he shifted into a different face, an extra layer of insurance. Mouth moving in a soundless incantation, he sank into the cold water and swam toward an ancient, abandoned merpeople cave. Inside, runes carved into the walls glowed faintly green in the dark. "By the Master's will," he whispered, setting a pure black crystal on the altar in the cave's center. The stone opened like a mouth of shadow, devouring light. The runes flared one by one as a hateful black magic circle, 3 meters across, formed above the altar. A putrid stench rose from its center, the smell of death, and the circle opened into a space thick with malign creatures. That, however, was only the first step. Barty swam out and along the path to the merpeople village, hid guiding runes in seams of seaweed and cracks in rock. From the surface, they looked innocuous. Once someone approached, they would emit a faint buzz, irresistible magic, and lead the victim to the cave. Especially Granger. He forced a grim smile. She must be the first to come. He'd prepared an enhanced guiding circle keyed to Hermione's magic, a beacon that would resonate with her and draw her straight into the trap. Then he took several black eggs from a specially made container. These were monstrous spawn engineered by dark magic. They would hatch instantly when triggered by a specific spell. Small but ferocious, resistant to light magic, he buried them one by one in the mud where the competition would be held. When the contest begins, these little darlings will wake, he chuckled. The whole Black Lake will become a slaughterhouse. Even if others tried to help, they'd be tangled by the creatures, and Hermione would be forced to face the devouring circle alone. Far above, in the floating city, Jason watched the surveillance feeds and sneered. Dark circles, monster eggs. They've gone all out, he said. He had no intention of stopping the trap. His plan was broader. 0. Initiate counter-deployment. Command confirmed. Arcane counter-magic circles are deploying. Across the unseen lakebed, thousands of fingernail-sized arcane devices activated, silently rewriting the lake's magical environment. Every subtle change in the Black Lake's enchantments was captured and analyzed by 0. Master, the target has deployed a spatial anchor inside the cave. It blocks apparition, 0 reported. Jason nodded. Everything was under control. Good. Let him do it. Who said we were going to use apparition? He mused. The backup he'd prepared for Hermione didn't rely on it. This time, not only will Hermione be saved, but every single one of his operatives on this line will be exposed and pulled out, one by one. His knuckles tapped the armrest. He wanted the whole magical world to see, with its own eyes, how Lord Voldemort's followers had been operating at Hogwarts. 0. Save all surveillance data at the highest resolution. Understood. Data is being backed up in real time, every frame clearer than a magical photograph. Those recordings would become evidence. At the same time, the merpeople village under the Black Lake stirred. This smell, an elder murmured, flicking his wrinkled tail fin. It's the smell of death. Young warriors gathered, spears clutched. Elder, what should we do? The elder looked toward the castle looming above the water. Send a messenger to Dumbledore. Moments later, Dumbledore, who had been reviewing papers in his office, paused and turned toward the lake. He walked down to receive a soaked merperson envoy who slapped the water with his fins as he spoke in a rough, sharp dialect. Underwater, something unclean. The elder is very uneasy. Dumbledore's face grew grave. Jason had already fed him some of the information. It's an aura of death, the power of dark magic, he said. The power is near our sacred place, the envoy added. Dumbledore considered. Tomorrow's competition may be very dangerous. We will need your help. After a brief exchange, a quiet agreement was reached. The merpeople would discreetly protect the students during the contest and keep watch over everything at the bottom of the lake. We merpeople do not like to meddle in the disputes of you land dwellers, the envoy said, but we will not allow foul things to defile our home. Tomorrow's competition may be a war, Dumbledore said softly. We need the strength of all our friends. The merpeople will keep their promise, the envoy replied. Evil shall not prevail in the Black Lake. Night deepened. Barty Crouch Jr. returned to his room, pleased with the trap he'd woven. In the floating city, Jason ran the final system checks. Every countermeasure was in place. Beneath the lake, merpeople warriors slipped into the shadows, spears glinting coldly. Dumbledore stood at his window and watched the tranquil water, his gaze distant. On the horizon, a narrow strip of dawn began to pale the sky. A storm was about to break. 294, the beginning of the second task, February 24th, early morning. The shores of the Black Lake were already crowded. Hastily erected grandstands sat packed with spectators. Ministry officials occupied the best seats with the kind of pomp reserved for ceremonies, while students below craned their necks, buzzing with guesses about the next challenge. No one suspected that this lively spectacle was the overture to a carefully engineered death trap. At 10 o'clock, Ludo Bagman stepped onto the judge's platform and, with his voice magically amplified, called out across the water. Ladies and gentlemen, the second task of the Triwizard Tournament begins now. On the diving platform, the four champions prepared in their different ways. Cedric muttered a charm and a clear bubble quickly formed, sealing his head in an air pocket. Fleur Delacour's skin shifted, the faint suggestion of gills appearing beneath the surface, an advantage of her Vela blood. Victor Crumb's transformation was the most dramatic, his head taking on the shape of a shark's, rows of teeth and fierce eyes completing the image. Harry Potter's entry was immediately striking. His deep-sea ranger arcane diving suit was impressive enough, and the thunder trident he held crackled with electricity. The crowd erupted. "What is that thing? Wow, it looks amazing!" Harry really went all out. Even at the judges' table, the officials glanced over, intrigued. But in the depths of Mad Eye Moody's magical eye, a shadow of satisfaction flickered. "Ready, go!" At Bagman's signal, the four champions plunged into the cold black lake. Cedric adapted first. The bubblehead charm let him breathe, and his practiced transfiguration made him an efficient swimmer. He found the merpeople village quickly and headed for Cho Chang. Just as he reached her, a swarm of Grindylows burst from the weeds, long-clawed water demons that hunted solitary wizards. Cedric cursed and fired stupefy after stupefy. After a violent struggle, he drove them back, but his energy was badly drained. Fleur fared worse. She'd hardly begun her search for Gabrielle when Grindylows homed in on her Vela blood. The creatures attacked in dense, frenzied waves. Fleur was forced to conjure heat and steam underwater to escape, leaving her nearly spent and pale. Crumb's approach was simpler and brutal. With a shark's jaws and massive strength, he charged through anything that opposed him. He bit Grindylows, tore through weed beds, and soon found Hermione. His noisy method, however, alerted the entire merpeople village and drew many hostile eyes. Harry's start was unnervingly smooth. His diving suit let him move as if on solid ground beneath the surface. The lightning arcing along his thunder trident discouraged any creature from approaching. He reached the merpeople village and saw the four hostages, Ron, Hermione, Cho, and little Gabrielle, bound by magical ropes and floating, unconscious, on the lake bed. He moved to free Ron first, as the rules required. Suddenly, the lake bed beneath him gave way. A huge black vortex opened without warning, its awful suction drawing him in before he could react. The other end of that vortex was Barty Crouch Jr.'s trap. Harry felt the world tilt. When he could see clearly again, he found himself in an alien space filled with dark energy. The water here was no longer water, but a thick, foul-smelling black liquid. Worse, Ron and Hermione had been dragged in with him. Both still lay unconscious, and black, shifting patterns were already crawling across their skin, the work of the corrosive, malevolent energy in that place. "Ron, Hermione!" Harry cried, struggling toward them. The viscous liquid clung to him, each stroke an ordeal. The thunder trident sputtered and dimmed, its electricity reduced to a weak glow. At the far end of the chamber, a massive black shape writhed and began to stir, an evil entity summoned by a malignant magic array, feeding on human life. Above the surface, the crowd sang and cheered, oblivious to how close Harry was to death. At the judges' table, the imposter Moody's smile was almost imperceptible. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. Harry and his two closest friends would be fed to the array, and a shattered Jason Lester, after losing everything, would be left in ruins. Jason had miscalculated one thing. In the floating city, he watched the surveillance feed as the trap came into effect. "It has begun," he said softly. "0, activate the counter program." "Counter program activated. All systems ready," 0 answered. Jason rose, a dangerous light in his eyes. Time to wake up the rats hiding in the gutters. Deep beneath the lake, the Merperson elder sensed the dark surge of magic. "That evil array has been activated," he warned. "As per our agreement, we must act," he ordered, and a group of Merperson warriors swam toward the anomaly, with spears at the ready. When they reached the vortex, they were met with an invisible barrier and driven back. The alien space had been sealed with powerful wards. "Quick, inform Headmaster Dumbledore," the elder shouted. Dumbledore received the message, and the calm smile left his face. He stood at once. "What is wrong?" Cornelius Fudge asked, puzzled. "There's been an incident with the task," Dumbledore said, and hurried toward the lake. Snape, sensing danger, rose and followed silently. Only the fake Moody remained seated, his face a mask that flickered with concern but hid a private, triumphant glee. In the floating city, Jason completed his final preparations. A faint halo of light gathered around him. No ordinary magic, but a demigod's power. "Hermione, wait for me," he murmured, then stepped and vanished from the lab. The next instant, he was over the Black Lake. The sudden appearance of a figure in midair caused a stir among the spectators. Jason did not hear it. His eyes were fixed on the black vortex at the lake's bottom. "Barty Crouch Jr.," he said, cold as ice. "Your time is up." With his arrival, the whole atmosphere over the lake changed. The water roiled, dark clouds gathered, and a crushing pressure fell over the stands. The crowd panicked and shrank back. In the alien space Harry fought on, the dark liquid weighing on him, when he felt the viscous blackness begin to thin. A warm light descended and wrapped him and his friends in a protective glow. "Jason?" Harry whispered, stunned and grateful. "It's me," Jason's voice answered through the chamber. "Ready? Time to teach those who don't stand the light a lesson they won't forget." Above the lake, the weather shifted dramatically. Thunder rolled as Jason's power pressed down. At the judge's table, Draco Malfoy clenched his fists, eyes shining with adoration. "The young master is about to act," he breathed. The impostor Moody, calm until that moment, finally faltered. The mad eye revolved faster, then fixed on the figure in the sky. Fear spread through him, raw and immediate. For the first time, he realized he had badly underestimated Jason Lester. But the trap had already been sprung, and in that instant, the roles of hunter and prey began to reverse. In that pocket realm, the dark energy was so dense it would not disperse. Every time Harry moved his arm, it felt like moving through congealed tar. He struggled to reach Ron and Hermione, who were not far away. The alarm in his deep-sea ranger diving suit screamed in his ears. The energy bar was plunging. Damn it! Harry grit his teeth. His thunderous trident could not even spark in that place. Ron and Hermione floated helplessly. Black sigils crawled over Ron's skin, deepening and writhing as they pushed against whatever defenses had been placed. The purification amulet at Hermione's throat flared, throwing up a thin veil of light around her and burning away the dark energy near her. But the corruption kept seeping in, and the light flickered, threatening to gut her out. The amulet was only buying time. In the deepest part of the pocket realm, the enormous black shadow woke fully, countless tentacles unfurled, each as thick as a barrel, covered in slick black scales. More than a dozen eyes glittered red in the darkness, radiating pure malice. "Hey!" A sound without language wormed into Harry's mind. Fresh souls, so delicious. The tentacles struck, carrying the reek of rot. Harry raised his trident and, drawing on the last of his strength, cast a faint arc of electricity. The bolt struck the thing and barely scalded its hide. It was over, then the entire space shook. Above Black Lake, Jason hovered, his body glowing. Golden light rolled back the dark clouds and turned the lake's surface bright as day. The crowd froze. What is that? How is he flying? Is that even magic? Ministry officials gaped as if their jaws had dropped. Jason paid them no mind. His attention was on the churning black vortex at the lake bottom. 0. Positioning complete, a mechanical voice reported in his mind. Target locked, preparing for spatial tear. Jason raised his right hand. A globe of pure arcane energy condensed in his palm, shimmering with streams of light and carrying the quiet menace of annihilation. "Open, up," he said, and clenched his fist before driving it down. A pillar of golden light speared through the heavens and struck the heart of the black vortex. The lake roared. A wall of water 100 meters high tore into the sky. The barrier of the pocket realm splintered under the force. Rifts were ripped open. Jason flashed and dove through. He was a sun breaking into that dark world. Light poured from him, and the viscous black ooze hissed and evaporated where it touched, reverting to ordinary lake water. "Jason!" Harry shouted, voice raw with relief. Jason's gaze went straight to the monster. "Dark scum," he said coldly. "Who gave you the audacity to touch my people?" The creature lashed back with a mental roar, its red eyes flaring. "Who are you? This is my domain." Jason's mouth twitched into a chilling smile. "I'm here to end you." Before the words had left his lips, he flicked his hand. A bolt of lightning, not ordinary lightning, but the judgment lightning, heavy with demigod force, streaked out. The pocket realm became blinding white. The monster screamed as its scales blackened, and the thing bled shadows. Impossible, it howled. You're just human. Human, Jason scoffed. Light swelled from him, and an overwhelming pressure rolled outward. The creature trembled, the instinctive fear of a lesser being faced with a god, while Jason moved to where Harry and his friends floated. He touched Hermione's forehead with one finger, and a gentle light flowed from his fingertip. The remaining darkness on her skin evaporated, color rushed back into her face. The black sigils on Ron were worse. Jason poured a steady stream of pure life energy into him, and the marks faded under the cleansing. Harry, shielded by his gear, had only suffered mentally. A warm current from Jason's hand chased the cold dread from him. "How do you feel?" Jason asked. "Much better," Harry panted. "Thank you, Jason." Even as he healed them, Jason worked. 0. Record all magic traces of this array. Recording complete. Detected Barty Crouch Jr.'s magic signature, and a dark arts imprint from Lord Voldemort, the system replied. The proof was irrefutable. Jason's face hardened. He turned back to the dying monster. "Now, it's your turn." The creature tried to flee, but Jason brought his hands together and then slowly pulled them apart. A globe of blinding light swelled between his palms, power enough to level a mountain. "Light of purification," he intoned. The sphere struck and swallowed the monster. In pure light, its body disintegrated particle by particle until nothing remained. The immediate threat was gone, but the pocket realm and its machinery still pulsed at the lake bottom. Jason moved to the heart of the array. The black crystal ball still radiated evil. With his bare hands, he carved runes into the air. Golden sigils sprang up and wrapped the dark array. Sealing spell, eternal cage. The runes spun into a complex seal and crushed the dark array's resistance. The rifts snapped shut. The passage to that other world was closed. Jason's divine sight swept the lakebed. Every monster egg Barty had buried would not escape. Lightning prison. Countless bolts arced down and struck each egg. The dangers at the bottom of the lake were completely eradicated. When Jason rose from the water with Harry, Ron, and Hermione, cradled in bands of soft light, the stadium was utterly still. A few people fell to their knees. What they had witnessed was not a competition incident, but a miracle. In the judge's box, the man pretending to be Mad-Eye Moody went ashen. His plot had been unmasked. He knew he was finished. Jason set the 3 students gently on the platform and turned to the assembled crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice carrying across the stands, "what happened here was not an accident of the tournament. It was a deliberate attempt to murder innocent students." An uproar rose. Someone placed a dark arts array at the bottom of Black Lake to do just that, Jason continued, and his gaze cut to the judge's box. "And the person responsible is sitting among us." All eyes followed the knife edge of his stare to the man in the box. The effects of the polyjuice potion failed. Under 1,000 horrified looks, the grizzled, weathered face of Mad-Eye Moody sloughed away like a mask, revealing a pale, young face. "Barty Crouch Jr., Dumbledore cried. The deception was done. Jason hung there in the golden air like a god dispensing judgment. Today, justice had been done, and the rats hiding in the gutters would finally face their reckoning. This day would be recorded in the history of the wizarding world, not for the tournament, but for the arrival of a demigod. Jason Lester, in all his power, announced to the entire magical community no one should dare touch his people. No one. 296. The political storm. After the shock. The moment Jason, Harry, and the 2 others burst from the water, the balance of the entire magical world was shattered. No one had imagined that a competition meant to be light-hearted would become a turning point in history. On the stands by the Black Lake, thousands were thrown into chaos. The instant Jason unleashed his power, a terrifying, singular pressure, like an invisible tsunami belonging to a demigod, swept every inch of land for miles around. It had nothing to do with ordinary magic. It acted directly on the essence of life itself. Muggles felt only a tightness in their chests and an inability to breathe, as if the air had turned to glue. For wizards, the effect was far worse. Their magical cores thrummed violently, their bodies shaking uncontrollably. More than half the crowd slumped to the ground, unable to lift their heads. This was absolute domination from the top of the food chain, an overwhelming force at the species level. Jason had come within a single step of true godhood. Only beings on that same level could stand and look him in the eye. The chattering among spectators stopped as if a thread had been cut. Is he a god? A Beauxbatons girl stammered. No one answered. Everyone was struggling under the deadly pressure. Even the Durmstrang students, who prided themselves on their stoicism, went pale. Their instincts screamed, "Run. This person is beyond comprehension." Hogwarts students were slightly steadier. Some had been prepared by previous hints of Jason's strength, but most remained frozen in their seats, too afraid to move. At the judges' table, the situation was worse. Ludo Bagman's face had drained of color. His magically amplified voice was silenced as the magic within him churned. Igor Karkaroff slumped in his chair like a rag, despair in his eyes. As a former Death Eater, he understood better than most what this display meant. That wasn't magic. That was something only a god could do. Madame Maxime's giant bloodline let her resist a little longer, but she was barely conscious, her eyes wide with terror. The flashes from magical cameras had stopped long ago, not for lack of desire, but because hands trembled too much to press shutters. Rita Skeeter lay half-collapsed on the ground, her expression an unsettling mix of fear and morbid fascination. She knew she was witnessing an unprecedented event in the history of magic. More and more spectators began to kneel. Faced with that level of power, their instincts chose the most honest response: submission. In the magical world, might makes right. Jason's punch had clearly breached the bounds of the ordinary. News reached the Ministry of Magic at incredible speed. Not through spells, but through that same pressure that had swept across 100 miles. Cornelius Fudge was in his office when his heart suddenly clenched. An invisible force bearing from the north hit him. His magic churned. His face went white. Before he could collect himself, a flood of emergency reports poured in. Minister! Abnormal magical fluctuations detected from the direction of Hogwarts. Minister! Jason Lester tore open space. Minister! He dragged out Barty Crouch Jr. Each message sounded like a hammer strike to Fudge's chest. Tearing space, space, he muttered, pacing. As Minister for Magic, he knew what space magic could do. The most powerful wizards might apparate short distances, but what had been done at Hogwarts, ripping a doorway between worlds, was beyond comprehension. High-ranking officials were summoned at once. Dolores Umbridge stormed in, face drawn and voice shrill. Minister, we must act immediately. Jason Lester has become the greatest threat to the magical world. Act how? Fudge gave a bitter laugh. Send Aurors to arrest him? Do you think our Aurors can deal with someone who can tear open space? Umbridge ground her teeth. We should contact the International Confederation of Wizards, declare him a global threat, and seek international sanctions. Sanctions? Fudge sounded almost hysterical. Do you know how many representatives were at Hogwarts? They all saw his power with their own eyes. Do you think they'll help us sanction a boy who can rip open space? Everyone in the room knew the game was no longer theirs to play. In a corner, Barty Crouch sat rigid, listening, but inwardly reeling. His carefully laid plan had been ruined. Worse, Jason now possessed evidence that could expose his dealings with Voldemort and the conspiracy in full. His political career, perhaps even his life, hung by a thread. Minister, Barty forced himself to say, we should consider compromise. Compromise? Fudge's glare was icy. Barty swallowed. Jason Lester's power is beyond us. Instead of making him an enemy, why not? Why not what? Umbridge cut in. Bend the knee to a student. Where would the ministry put its face? Face, Barty laughed bitterly. In front of someone who can tear space, how much is face worth? The argument escalated, but the truth was plain to everyone. They no longer called the shots. News spread faster than any ministry could control. Within an hour, the whole of Europe knew what had happened at Hogwarts. In Paris, the French Minister for Magic read the report in stunned silence. Tearing space? He repeated. Are you sure this isn't exaggerated? Certain, Minister. Our on-site people witnessed it. Jason Lester opened a rift to another dimension. The minister thought for a long moment, then ordered an emergency meeting. We must reassess our relationship with the British ministry. Send an envoy to speak directly to this Jason Lester. You mean? The official began. It's simple, the minister said, eyes glittering. If the British can't control this force, we'll bypass them and speak to him ourselves. The German ministry acted even faster. Within 30 minutes, they had dispatched a special envoy to Britain seeking diplomatic ties with the City of Dawn. "We must be on the right side of history," the German minister told his aides. "Jason Lester's power ushers in a new era. We cannot be left behind." Italy, Spain, and the Nordic ministries convened emergency sessions one after another. Everyone realized the magical world's power table was being reshuffled. A new superpower was entering the game, and its core was a 14-year-old boy. The United States Magical Congress took a more cautious tack. "Wait and see," their president said. "Gather intelligence on Jason Lester's intentions. At the same time, activate our contingency plans. If he can rip open space, we must prepare defenses." Back at Hogwarts, the aftershocks continued. Students huddled in common rooms, whispering in hushed voices, afraid of being overheard. "Jason's practically a god," a Gryffindor breathed. "Did you see him tear open space? He vaporized that monster with an orb." Many others were silent. Their classmate had become an existence they could barely comprehend. In the Slytherin common room, the mood was complicated. Draco, sitting by the fire, watched with an almost worshipful look. "The young master has revealed his true power," he said softly. "From now on, the magical world will know who calls the shots." Other Slytherins exchanged looks of envy and fear. They knew Draco's ties to Jason, and they knew what it meant to align with him. In the staff room, the professors were in a different kind of turmoil, less shocked than contemplative. Those who had been present for Jason's earlier confrontation with death felt a deeper resonance. "What he displayed today is close to what we saw before," Professor McGonagall said quietly, eyes lit by memory, the memory of that earth-shattering demigod battle a year ago. Dumbledore nodded. "When he faced death back then, I foresaw this day. But today exceeded my expectations," McGonagall continued. "His rate of growth is faster than I imagined." Professor Flitwick, still shaken by what he'd witnessed near the Forbidden Forest, murmured, "Tearing space. Death did that too. Jason has already mastered godlike authority." Snape, pale but with a new, fierce light in his eyes, spoke in a cold voice. "He is not far from true godhood." The others understood the weight of his words. According to the contract Jason had made with death, his ascent toward the fourth tier of godhood carried implications too painful to ignore. Names, Ariana, Lily, James, were etched into their minds like brands. "I can feel the fluctuations of death's power within him growing stronger," McGonagall added. "The contract's force is pushing him onward." "And," Dumbledore said, "he is still growing. Today is only the beginning." Professor Sprout, who had not witnessed the divine battle in person, but had heard its details from colleagues, said in awe, "An existence that could threaten death. We are witnessing the birth of a new god." As night fell, the entire magical world whispered the same name, Jason Lester. Magical newspapers went into overdrive. The Daily Prophet's editors argued over how to report an event without precedent. "We must be objective," the editor-in-chief insisted, "but also emphasize Jason Lester's contributions. He saved 3 students and exposed the Death Eater's conspiracy." The Wizarding Weekly prepared a special feature, "The Arrival of a New God, Jason Lester and the Future of the Magical World." International media followed suit. The Magical Times and the European Wizard Daily splashed the story across their front pages. In the floating city, Jason stood on the highest balcony looking down at the brilliantly lit silhouette of Hogwarts. "Zero. What are the reactions from other countries?" he asked. "Statistics complete," came the reply. "France, Germany, Italy, and 7 other countries have expressed interest in establishing diplomatic relations. The United States, Russia, and others are observing. The British Ministry of Magic is deeply divided." Jason nodded. "Very good. Today's effect worked well." "Master, what are your plans?" "Simple." Jason smiled. "Let them realign. The old rules are breaking. A new era is coming. I will make the new rules." At that moment, Hermione pushed the door open and entered, worry on her face. "Jason, are you all right?" she asked as she crossed the balcony. He turned and pulled her into his arms. "I'm fine. I was just thinking that starting tomorrow, our lives might change." "How different?" "The whole magical world is about to be reshuffled." He stroked her hair. "And we'll be at the top of this new world." Hermione hugged him tightly. "Whatever happens, I'll be with you." "I know." Jason kissed her forehead. "That's enough." Outside the window, the stars glittered. Quietly and inexorably, a new era began. The air in the Hogwarts dungeons was so thick it felt as if it could be wrung out. In the temporary interrogation room, the only sound was Barty Crouch Jr.'s heavy, unhinged breathing. Newly carved runes along the stone walls glowed faintly, stretching everyone's shadows long and distorted. He was bound to a chair with shimmering ropes of magic, muttering to himself, "The Master will return. The Master will avenge me." Jason rested his chin on his hand and watched as if watching a poor one-man show. Around him, Dumbledore, Amelia Bones, and several wizened members of the Wizengamot wore grim faces. "Begin," Jason said. Severus Snape stepped out of the shadows holding a small vial of clear liquid. "Veritaserum," he announced flatly. "Purest strain. 3 drops will make him tell us everything." At the sight of the potion, Barty's pupils contracted. He began to lurch and thrash. "No, you can't? I'm a wizard. I have rights." "Rights?" Jason scoffed. "Did you discuss rights with those students before you tried to slaughter them?" Snape didn't wait for more babble. He pried Barty's jaw open and let 3 drops fall in. The potion took effect swiftly. The struggling stopped, the eyes went vacant, and he slumped, obedient to the spell. "Your true name," Amelia demanded. "Barty Crouch Jr.," he replied flatly. "Why did you impersonate Alastor Moody?" Jason asked. "The Master's command," Barty said, "to infiltrate Hogwarts, to watch Harry Potter, waiting for an opportunity." Amelia's quill clattered on the parchment. "A Death Eater hidden at Hogwarts for a year. Where is Lord Voldemort?" she asked. "I don't know," Barty said like a machine. "The Master does not tell me his exact location, but he will return soon. He needs a ritual." "A ritual?" Dumbledore pressed. "Resurrection," Barty said, and the grin that twisted his face was more like a twitch. "Using Harry Potter's blood to reshape his body, the Master will be stronger than ever." Color drained from Dumbledore's face. "The specific steps of the ritual," he demanded. "The last task of the Triwizard Tournament," Barty said. "The Goblet of Fire is a portkey. It will send Harry directly to the graveyard. The Master and the ritual are waiting there." "Damn it," Amelia hissed. "The entire tournament is a trap." Jason's face betrayed none of the surprise the others felt. He had expected some of this. "Tell me about the Ministry moles," he said. At the question, Barty began to tremble. Even the Veritaserum could not mask the fear. Many people," he stammered. His answers came in jagged pieces. "Cornelius Fudge, he isn't fully committed, but he took money." Names tumbled out. Dolores Umbridge, absolutely loyal to the Master. John Dawson, deputy head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Williams, one of the heads of the Auror office. With each name, the room grew colder. "France, Germany, we have people everywhere," Barty went on, voice hollow. "The Master's power, you don't understand." Jason narrowed his eyes. "What plans do they have against me?" A fanatic light flickered in Barty's glazed stare. "The Master is very wary of you. He says you are the biggest obstacle. You must be eliminated first." Many plans were prepared. "Such as?" Jason asked. "The first, to corrupt Hermione Granger with dark magic, to make you suffer, to drive you mad." The temperature seemed to drop several degrees around Jason. "Then, while you are out of control, all Death Eaters will besiege Hogwarts. If that fails, the backup plan will be activated." "Speak," Jason ordered. "Kidnap everyone you care about," Barty said. "The whole Weasley family, Dumbledore, Snape, hold them, trade their lives for yours." A cold, collective shiver ran through the room. The plan was vicious and calculated. "Anything else?" someone whispered. "If everything fails," Barty continued, his voice growing thin, "the Master has a last move. He will open every prison, release dark creatures and dark wizards, plunge the magical world into chaos. Then he will use the chaos to move into other countries and wait for the next chance." Jason nodded once. The information confirmed what he had feared. For the others, it landed like thunder. "Zero, record everything," he ordered. "Recording complete. Recommend immediate purging of Ministry moles," the voice of Zero replied. "Immediate purge," Amelia said, aghast. "I'll convene the Wizengamot, an emergency purge of the Ministry." "Not enough," Jason cut in. "One ministry won't do. Europe is rotten." "You mean international joint action," Jason said coldly. "They wanted to play a big game. We'll finish the table." Dumbledore opened his mouth, but Jason interrupted him. "No buts. From this moment, I declare war on all Death Eaters and their accomplices. I don't care where they hide or who they are. Not a single one will escape. This isn't a game. It's war, he continued. Since they came for me, don't blame me for flipping the table. Amelia swallowed. Jason, this will cause immense upheaval. If we allow them to keep rotting from the inside, the upheaval will be far worse, he said. They're parasites in the heart of our world. Rather than wait to be consumed, we make the first move. He walked to the small barred window and looked out into the dense night. 0. Initiate the purification plan. Purification plan initiated. Analyzing all target locations and threat levels. Estimated cleanup time, 72 hours. Recommend simultaneous public opinion control to gather international support. 0 replied. Very good. Jason turned back. Inform Draco. Full intelligence network open. Inform Lucius. Contact all friends who can be swayed. Inform Sirius. Have his people ready. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, voice hard, the game is over. It's time to drag these rats out of the sewers one by one and let them see the sun. Let them see what true power is. Dumbledore sighed. Jason, have you thought this through? Once you go down this path, there's no turning back. I know. Jason's eyes shone, startling in their intensity. Some things have to be done. Since I have the ability, the responsibility falls to me. They've already put the invitation in my face. If I don't return a proper response, it would be discourteous. Amelia drew a deep breath and made a visible decision. I understand. The Wizengamot will fully support you, but procedurally, we must ensure the operation's legality. Jason let out a humorless little laugh. The enemy's knife is at our throats, and you worry about legality? If that's your concern, it's simple. He raised a hand, and a pale screen unfurled in the air. 0. Release all evidence. The screen filled with detailed analyses of magical traces, Barty Crouch Jr.'s full confession, and intercepted intelligence from the abyssal plane. Amelia read through it, eyes widening, then nodded firmly. It's enough. The evidence is irrefutable. Then let's begin. Jason headed for the door. I'm going to the ministry to have a chat with Fudge about his life choices. Cleanup in other countries will be handled by assigned teams. Jason, Dumbledore called. Jason stopped but didn't turn. You think I'll become another Grindelwald? Dumbledore hesitated. I worry. Don't, Jason said flatly. I'm doing this to protect those I care about. As long as no one harms them, I won't kill innocents indiscriminately. His voice hardened and the room chilled. But whoever dares lay a hand on them, I will make that person regret that they were ever born. The interrogation was over, but a storm had only begun to sweep the magical world. That night, the owlery was busier than ever. Hundreds of owls carried urgent, secret letters to every corner of the globe. Each one was simple and direct. Purification operation. Commence. Target all Death Eaters and their accomplices. Time limit, 72 hours. Executor, Jason Lester. On the top floor of the floating city, Jason stood before a floor-to-ceiling window. Hogwarts glittered below like a bed of stars. 0. Status of teams in all locations, he asked. All in position. France led by Draco, Germany by Lucius, Italy by Sirius, came the reply. Very good, Jason said. Tell them this is not a slaughter but a setting of rules. I want every one of them to understand what happens when they cross me. Understood, Master. The door opened softly and Hermione stepped in. Jason, are you really going to do this? She asked, worry plain in her voice. He said nothing. He pulled her into his arms and held her tight. What's wrong? Do you think I've gone too far? No. She buried her face in his chest. I'm just worried about you. You'll make a lot of enemies. They already are, he said, voice low, almost a smile. Since that's true, we might as well clean them up at once. Hermione's arms tightened around him. I understand. Whatever you do, I will stand by you. Thank you. He kissed her forehead. That's enough. Outside the window, night lay deep and absolute. When dawn came, the world would not be the same. 298. Political purge and the establishment of a new order. London, Diagon Alley. At dawn, the cobbles rang with the thunder of wings as Daily Prophet owls descended in a flurry, scattering newspapers like snow. Today's edition felt like a brick in the hand. Its headline, in letters large enough to wallpaper a room, screamed, Shocking Scandal. Death Eater infiltrated Hogwarts for a year. Barty Crouch Jr. impersonated Moody, conspired to murder students. The subhead stained the page with accusation. High-ranking ministry officials compromised. Minister Fudge suspected of harboring Death Eaters. Wizards and witches went frantic. Grabbing a copy became as frantic as the scramble for a Nimbus 2000 once was. My goodness, is this true? A witch stammered. Barty Crouch Jr.? Didn't he die in Azkaban ages ago? Look at this photo, the one where Jason ripped open a rift. And this confession. Merlin's beard, the ministry, it's rotten to the core. The paper printed Barty Crouch Jr.'s full confession verbatim, alongside physical evidence from dark arts rituals, magic trace analyses, structural diagrams of the rites, even Voldemort's personal magic signature. The image that stunned everyone most was the photograph of Jason suspended in midair, bathed in golden light. He was no longer merely a wizard, he looked godlike. A trembling finger tapped the picture. Bare-handed, ripping open space. More people pressed into Diagon Alley's square. Anger fermented and then exploded. "Those imbeciles at the Ministry of Magic," someone shouted. "What have they done? Fudge must go. We demand answers." The protest swelled into a torrent surging toward the ministry. "Down with the corrupt ministry! Clean house! Jason Lester is a hero!" Inside the ministry, the air hung thick and sour. Cornelius Fudge sat slumped in his office, his face drained of color. Resignation letters and impeachment motions lay in piles on his desk. An official entered, hands shaking. "Minister, the crowds outside are growing. They demand your immediate resignation." Fudge forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Resign? Is that useful now?" His hand trembled as he picked up a copy of the Prophet. Barty Crouch Jr., he confessed everything. He swallowed. "Everything, even the donations I accepted." The office door burst open. Amelia Bones led several Wizengamot members in, her expression stone cold. "Cornelius, it's over." Fudge looked at her hollow-eyed. "Amelia, no need to explain." Bones lifted a hand to silence him. "The Wizengamot has passed the impeachment motion." Her voice left no room for argument. "You are dismissed." Fudge crumpled into his chair like a ruptured sack. "Then, the new minister is—" "I will serve as interim minister until a new election," Bones announced, every word precise. "My first order is a full investigation of the ministry. All officials named by Barty Crouch Jr. are suspended pending inquiry." Fudge closed his eyes. It was finished. In the Wizengamot chamber, the atmosphere was equally oppressive. 50 members sat on high benches, grim and silent. Amelia Bones stood in the center of the hall and addressed them. "Today we face the darkest hour the ministry has seen. The Death Eater's infiltration reaches depths we never imagined." She flicked her wand, and a list unfurled in the air. According to Barty Crouch Jr.'s confession, the following individuals are suspected of transfers of benefit or cooperation with Death Eaters: Dolores Umbridge, John Dawson, Williams. Name after name was read, and faces around the chamber went pale. The list swept through every key department. "I propose the immediate formation of a special investigation committee." One member rose. "Thorough investigations of these people." "Agreed, agreed." The vote passed unanimously. Just as the Wizengamot began to correct itself, Lucius Malfoy stood. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have a proposal." His tone drew the room quiet. "Our own strength is insufficient. We must seek external assistance." "Malfoy, what do you mean?" Bones asked, frowning. "I propose we formally invite the City of Dawn to help rebuild the Ministry's security system." Lucius's words were a dropped bomb. "The City of Dawn?" whispered the benches. "Jason Lester's floating city?" "Exactly," Lucius nodded. "The power Mr. Jason Lester demonstrated is beyond our comprehension. He exposed this corruption and saved our children and the future of the ministry. He is an ally we can trust." The image of Jason ripping a rift still burned in everyone's minds. To stand against such a force would be courting disaster. Bones considered briefly and then decided, "I agree with Mr. Malfoy's proposal. We need Mr. Lester's help." The Wizengamot voted again, 38 in favor, 12 against. The motion passed. 3 days later, in a conference room of the floating city, Jason sat at the head of the table with an embossed invitation before him. Draco read aloud, "Interim Minister of Magic Amelia Bones formally invites the City of Dawn to assist the Ministry of Magic in rebuilding its security system, and sincerely requests Mr. Jason Lester to serve as Chief Security Advisor for the magical world." Jason tapped his fingers on the table. "They finally caught on," Draco said. Jason rose and walked to the window. "I agree," he said simply, "but I have conditions. Please state them." First, the Ministry must fully lift restrictions on research into arcane technology. He held up a finger. Second, allow meditation to be legally taught and disseminated across the magical world. He counted as he spoke. Third, the existing magical education system must be completely overhauled and made fairer. Fourth, the City of Dawn shall enjoy full extraterritoriality within the magical world. Fifth, the City of Dawn's recruitment of wizards shall be fully open and unobstructed. Young Master, are these conditions? Draco began. Excessive? Jason turned and smiled. Not at all. We pulled their government out of a fire. This is a small return. Besides, the rules of this world will be set by me now. They have no right to refuse. 3 days later, the Great Hall at Hogwarts had been repurposed for a signing ceremony. Representatives from ministries worldwide packed the hall. Jason wore a tailored black suit and sat at the main table, Hermione beside him, their hands clasped under the table. Opposite them stood Amelia Bones and senior Wesengamot officials. Dumbledore sat at the center as witness. Ladies and gentlemen, Bones intoned, her voice amplified by charm, today we witness an agreement to be recorded in history, the Hogwarts Ministry of Magic Cooperation Agreement. She unrolled the parchment and read the core clauses. First, the Ministry of Magic formally recognizes the City of Dawn as an independent, legitimate entity, and both parties will establish formal diplomatic relations. Second, Mr. Jason Lester will serve as Chief Security Advisor for the magical world, responsible for rebuilding the Ministry's security. Third, the Ministry will fully open research on arcane technology and recognize the legal status of meditation, permitting its free dissemination. Fourth, both parties will jointly establish a new magical education system. Fifth, the City of Dawn and all its members will enjoy extraterritoriality within the magical world and will not be bound by the Ministry's existing laws. Murmurs rippled through the crowd after each clause. These terms effectively handed control of half the magical world to one young man. Jason signing meant a new order. I now invite the parties to sign, Bones said. Jason picked up the quill and signed. Golden ink shimmered on the parchment as if alive. Bones followed and signed. The agreement is now in effect, Dumbledore announced. Applause followed, polite but restrained. No one was truly cheering a partnership so much as bearing witness to the rise of a monarch. The old order lay shattered. A new order was forming under Jason Lester's feet. Back in the floating city after the ceremony, Hermione asked softly, "How does it feel?" "What feeling?" "The feeling of becoming the real ruler of the magical world." Jason smiled. "Not bad. At least no one will dare bother us casually anymore." "So what's next?" He looked out at the endless night sky. The real work begins. Rebuilding order, promoting arcane technology, and cultivating truly capable talent. He turned, took Hermione's hand. Most importantly, helping this world complete its ascension. "Only then can I fulfill that promise with death," he added. Hermione hugged him tightly. "Whatever you want to do, I'll be with you." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Outside the window, the star stream glittered. A new era had already begun. In the headmaster's office at Hogwarts, a strain that had lived in the bones of the school for months finally loosened. Sunlight poured through the stained glass windows and threw colored patterns across the old wooden desk. Dumbledore sat behind it with a genuinely relieved smile, a sight that hadn't appeared in a long while. Barty Crouch Jr.'s plot had been fully exposed. The heavy stone that had pressed on everyone's hearts had been rolled away. "Jason, I think we'll have to rethink the third task," Dumbledore said, his voice noticeably lighter. "The original one is obviously unusable now." Jason, seated opposite him, tapped idly on the armrest. "The crisis is averted. There's no reason to follow Voldemort's script any longer." "I actually have an idea." Amelia Bones stepped out of the fireplace, green flue powder still clinging to her. "Now that the Ministry has changed hands, why not turn the third task into a stage to usher in a new era?" "How so?" Dumbledore asked. "Show what the fusion of traditional magic and arcane technology looks like," Bones said, taking a chair. "Let the whole magical world see the future of magic." Jason's eyebrows lifted. "More details?" "No more simple mazes," Bones replied, unrolling a parchment covered with dense structural diagrams. "Make it a multi-level comprehensive challenge. The first level will test magical knowledge, not just old theory, but the practical application of arcane principles. The second will test practical combat, simulated dangers to see how the champions use what they've learned to survive. The third will test innovation, give them an open-ended problem, and see who can creatively combine old magic with new technology. Dumbledore stroked his beard, looking out the window. This keeps the excitement of the competition while also steering young wizards toward a new direction. He turned to Jason. But how are Harry and the others with their arcane foundations? Can they handle such a difficult task? Jason smiled. You forget, they've been studying for nearly a year. First-order arcane theory is a piece of cake for them. They're even getting comfortable with some second-order applications. As for the other three champions, he added with a playful glint, Cedric, Fleur, and Krum are all talented. Give them time, intensive training, and they'll catch up. 3 days later, the Hogwarts library hummed with activity on a scale usually reserved for a Quidditch final. Harry sat at a long table with several heavy arcane tomes spread out before him. Advanced second-order elemental manipulation, complex rune array design, principles of mental field construction. This theory of multi-element fusion is fascinating, he muttered, quill racing across parchment as he sketched complex runes. If you mix fire and wind at this ratio, output could increase by at least 30%. Across from him, Cedric wrestled with basic arcane theory. Harry, what exactly is mental resonance? He asked, pointing at a line in the book with a puzzled look. It's about getting your mind and your magic on the same frequency, Harry said, closing his book. Old magic is poked at with a wand. Arcane is about shaping elements directly with your mind. Resonance lets you shape them far more precisely. He held out his hand. A small, perfectly formed wisp of flame appeared in his palm. Steady, controlled. See, that's direct mental control. Cedric's mouth hung open. It's far more stable than a fire charm. To reach this level, you've got work ahead, Harry warned, and then extinguished the flame. Nearby, Fleur Delacour was soft-voiced, reciting from advanced applications of healing spells. Her French accent lent the incantations a particular beauty. A green light flowed from her fingertips and touched a wilting flower in a vase. The buds straightened and bloomed, its colors richer than before. Not bad, Harry called. Fleur beamed. Beauxbaton's healing was already good. With arcane precision, it's much better. In a corner, Krum hunkered over applications of combat arcane. This mental guidance for a lightning strike, he muttered, following the instructions with his hands. A tiny electric arc crackled at his fingertips. It worked, he said, triumphant. Not strong yet, but I've got the feel. You're learning fast, Harry said. Durmstrang's foundation shows. Hermione came up the table. Progress? She asked. Better than expected, Cedric said, closing his book. Arcane theory is complex but logical. Once you get the concept of elemental affinity, it makes sense. Fleur added, it explains why some people naturally excel at certain magics. Why my charms are stronger than others, Cedric murmured. Because your mind naturally aligns with the charm element, Harry said. If you deepen that, your charm-based arcane spells could be terrifying. Krum nodded. I react particularly well to lightning. That's why lightning strike comes easier. Hermione folded her arms, pleased. Good. It seems you've all found your paths. Jason said the third task will test your understanding and application of arcane, Harry reminded them. It won't be impossible, Hermione winked. The goal is to show the effect of the fusion. And to show the magical world the path forward, she added. A week later, in the floating city exhibition hall, high-ranking officials from ministries of magic around the world gathered like country folk entering an enchanted garden. The massive hall was divided into areas by invisible forces, each shimmering with its own magical light. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason said from the center of the hall, a voice projection carrying to every corner, I'd like to show you some small arcane devices for everyday life. He waved and the first area lit up. First, medicine. A transparent human model floated there, lit with colored points marking organs and systems. Through mental scanning, we can locate lesions, Jason explained, gesturing. A red dot over the model's heart began to flash. He sent a soft green light from his fingertip, and the red dot contracted until it turned healthy blue. This is more precise than potions, with far fewer side effects. The crowd murmured. The French representative whispered, My Merlin, this is a medical revolution. Next, transportation. Jason moved to the second area, A sleek, rune-etched flying vehicle sat on a platform. Broomsticks carry one and aren't that fast. By combining rune arrays, we can build vehicles with greater capacity and speed. He tapped the vehicle. This can seat 10 and reaches speeds 3 times a firebolt's. No magical fuel, just recharge the runes periodically. The German representative's eyes brightened. If this spreads, transportation for the whole magical world will change. Finally, communication. Jason approached the third area, where several unremarkable mirrors were arranged. Traditional two-way mirrors are limited. Arcane improvements let us create a global network. He picked one up. 0. Connect to Paris. The surface rippled and opened onto a room where a young man in a City of Dawn uniform saluted. Master, Paris branch is operating normally. At that, formal decorum broke. Real-time international communication had once been fantasy. Jason set the mirror down and swept his gaze over the assembled delegates. I'm not showing this to boast. I'm showing a principle. Traditional magic and arcane are not enemies. They complement each other. Traditional magic has heritage and character. Arcane can't replace, and arcane's precision can let traditional magic achieve more. We don't replace one with the other. We move them forward together. The Italian representative rose. Mr. Lester, the future you describe is inspiring. How long will such a fusion take? That depends on your determination, Jason said. If ministries cooperate openly, like the British ministry has, significant changes could come within 10 years. If you cling to the old ways, the timeline is uncertain. The French and German delegates exchanged looks. The French Ministry of Magic is willing to partner with the City of Dawn, the French representative announced. So is the German ministry, said the German delegate. Others soon followed, voicing support. Jason nodded slowly. Very good. Then let us use the Tri-Wizard Tournament's third task as the start of this fusion. I believe the 4 champions will give us a big surprise. The date for the third task was set quickly. Unlike the first 2, this time the venue would not be Hogwarts, but the floating city's arena. The news sent the wizarding world into a frenzy. Held in the floating city? A Daily Prophet reporter sputtered. This is unprecedented. The City of Dawn actually allowed foreigners in. I've heard it's even more amazing than the stories, someone else chimed in. The day before the competition, the 4 champions were invited to tour the floating city. When they stepped onto the teleportation array and took in their surroundings, Cedric, Fleur, and Crumb stared. Oh my goodness, Fleur covered her mouth, eyes wide. Beneath a colossal crystal dome, countless glowing rune arrays rotated slowly, and the air shimmered with a dense, pure magic. This place is a miracle of magic and engineering, Cedric breathed. Harry smiled. With this as the arena, the third task will be unforgettable. They all understood that basic arcane knowledge was only an entry point. The real challenge would test not just theory, but the ability to combine 2 different powers into one in their hands, and to unleash it. 300. Global opening of the floating city. There was an unusually large gathering in the highest council chamber at the spire of the floating city that day. Jason's inner circle was present in full. Hermione, Harry, Draco, Lucius, Snape, Dumbledore, and even Fred and George had been summoned. In the center of the room, a massive holographic projection hovered silently. On the world map, a dense cluster of red dots glared back like a warning. Barty confessed, and Zero pieced the intelligence together, someone said. Jason stood before the projection. The situation is much worse than we thought. He swept his hand, and the map zoomed in on Europe, turning it a dazzling crimson. The French Ministry of Magic, at least 12 high-ranking officials. Germany is even worse, 18, including the minister. Italy, Spain, the Netherlands, continental Europe is practically rotten to the core. Dumbledore's brows drew together. Such a large-scale operation couldn't have been arranged in a day or 2. He's been planning since he fell last time, Jason said. Exactly, Hermione added. Zero's analysis shows their ambition isn't limited to Britain. They want control of the entire European magical world. The projection shifted, revealing a complex web of tangled connections. Look here, Death Eaters from different countries have long been in cahoots. The moment Lord Voldemort resurfaces, they will act in concert and overturn everything. By then, all of Europe will be lost. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the intake of breath. None of them had imagined such a sweeping scheme. Jason turned to the circle of faces. Each held a different expression. We can't hold out alone. We have to drag the whole world into this, he continued. Hermione was the first to react. You mean, open the City of Dawn to the world, Jason finished. There was stunned silence. Open the floating city's teleportation technology so wizards from everywhere can come here. Since the threat is global, we must form a global alliance. Draco's face pale, protested. Young master, isn't that too risky? Our technological advantage. Jason cut him off. What good is a technological advantage if everyone else is dead? Lucius's eyes shifted. He has a point. Better to be proactive than sit and watch the world burn. Besides, Jason added, opening the network doesn't mean we're handing over all our secrets. How cooperation agreements are signed and how the rules are set will still be under our control. Snape snorted coldly. The key is people. Not everyone can be trusted. I've already thought of that, Jason said, waving his hand. Another projection sprang to life. Zero has thoroughly investigated the backgrounds of each country. We'll prioritize countries heavily infiltrated by Death Eaters, but whose high-ranking officials are relatively clean. Like the Magical Congress of the United States, the Japanese Ministry of Magic, and the Australian Ministry of Magic. Dumbledore stroked his beard. The plan is feasible, but we need an opportunity, something that will make the world watch us. Opportunity? Hermione asked. Jason smiled. Isn't Project 3 the best opportunity? The world's eyes will be on this city. Perfect. Let them see our strength and our sincerity. Harry chimed in, apparently remembering something. Jason, what exactly do you mean by open up? First, build a global teleportation network, Jason explained. Connect all the major magical cities so travel becomes instantaneous. Second, open a surveyed alternate dimension for shared development. Let everyone get rich together. Third, recruit worldwide, inviting elites from everywhere to explore new worlds with us. Fred and George exchanged looks. Isn't this basically a global magical alliance? More or less. But we're not doing politics, we're doing technology and exploration. We provide the platform, they provide people and resources. Together we extract resources from other worlds. Jason nodded. Methods for processing resources will remain in our hands. If they want to turn resources into power, it will be through us. Together, we'll fight the dark forces and explore new worlds. Hermione reached out and gripped Jason's hand. I support you. This isn't just for the current crisis, it's for the future of the entire magical world. The others nodded in agreement. Jason was pleased. 0. Initiate the Global Open Plan. Global Open Plan initiated. Zero's voice echoed through the chamber. International Teleportation Array Construction Plan is being generated. First batch of teleportation points expected to be laid within 3 days. Alternate dimension safety assessment is being conducted simultaneously. 3 days later, the teleportation hall of the floating city had been transformed into something magnificent, like a coronation chamber. Representatives from ministries of magic across the globe had arrived to witness the dawn of a new era. In the center of the hall, a vast rune array rotated slowly, bathing the room in soft blue light. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason's voice, magically amplified, filled the hall. Today you will personally witness a milestone in magical transportation. The International Teleportation Array Network is officially launched. He gestured to the runes behind him. This network will connect 23 major magical cities worldwide. From London to New York, from Paris to Tokyo, from Sydney to Cairo. From now on, traveling between these places will take a blink. A representative from the Magical Congress of the United States stood. Mr. Lester, is this safe? Good question, Jason said, smiling. Each teleportation point is protected by top-tier security. Identity verification, magical power scanning, emergency shutdown, nothing is missing. All teleportation records will be monitored in real time. Anyone harboring ill intent will be flagged immediately. The Japanese representative asked about costs. How are construction and maintenance fees calculated? The City of Dawn will cover initial costs, Jason answered plainly. Subsequent maintenance will be apportioned according to usage. Our aim is to connect the magical world, not to make a profit. The French representative led a round of applause. Mr. Lester's vision is admirable. The French Ministry of Magic fully supports this. Others voiced agreement. Then activate it. Jason stepped to the control panel. 0. Begin connection. Connection procedure initiated, 0 replied. The rune array flared. Magical vibrations hummed through the hall. Connecting to Paris teleportation point, connection successful. Connecting to Berlin, connection successful. Connecting to New York, connection successful. As the city names lit up one by one, excitement in the hall mounted. All teleportation points connected, 0 announced. The International Teleportation Array Network is officially online. Jason faced the assembled crowd. Who wants to be the first to travel from London to Paris in one step? The French representative raised his hand without hesitation. He stepped into the array, skeptical. A flash of blue, and he was gone. Seconds later, he returned, face aglow with disbelief. My God, I was really in Paris. I even spoke with my colleagues in their office for a few minutes. Thunderous applause filled the chamber. But that's only the appetizer, Jason said. Next, our second open project, alternate dimension exploration. He flicked his hand and a massive projection unveiled several wildly different worlds. Primeval forests so dense they blotted out the sky, endless golden plains, silent ancient ruins. We have discovered many stable, safe alternate dimensions. These places contain countless magical resources and unique species. We've decided to open 3 of them to the world for joint development and research. What are the conditions? Asked the Australian representative. You want access? Fine, but there are rules, Jason replied. First, sign the Alternate Dimension Exploration Cooperation Agreement and comply with our exploration and environmental standards. Second, personnel must be qualified. We will provide full training and equipment. Third, all gains, resources, or knowledge must be shared according to the agreement. The German representative nodded. Very fair. The German Ministry of Magic will join. Other countries quickly expressed keen interest. Jason was pleased. Now for today's most significant announcement. The Global Alternate Dimension Adventurer Recruitment Plan. The hall fell silent. We will recruit the finest wizards and witches globally. Regardless of background or nationality, if you have courage and ability, you may apply to become an alternate dimension adventurer. We provide top-tier arcane equipment, the most comprehensive safety guarantees, and the most generous rewards. The American representative leaned forward. What are the standards? The bar isn't high. Adult wizarding level and a basic understanding of arcane matters is sufficient, Jason explained. But above all, you must have courage. We don't want only the strongest, we want the bravest. And the compensation? The Japanese representative asked. Basic pay will be 3 times that of a regular auror, Jason replied. The hall erupted. People gasped and whispered. In addition, there will be exploration bonuses, discovery bonuses, and benefits. Most crucially, all adventurers will have the opportunity to learn cutting-edge arcane techniques and even the chance to become permanent residents of the floating city. No one could refuse that. Representatives began whispering among themselves, already calculating how to secure spots. Of course, Jason said as murmurs rose, the screening will be strict. We will evaluate not only skill, but character. We're sending people into places no one has ever seen. You must be able to trust the person at your back. When does recruitment start? The French representative asked. Now, Jason said with a smile. From this moment, ministries of magic worldwide can begin recommending candidates. Within 1 month, we will complete the selection of the first 500 adventurers. 500. The scale stunned everyone. This was not merely an exploration team, it was practically an army. 0. Begin the broadcast. Broadcast system initiated, 0 replied, now transmitting simultaneously to 23 magical cities worldwide. The order was given. The next instant, from Diagon Alley in London to Magical Alley in New York to the Wizarding Town in Tokyo, the announcement spread. The entire magical world exploded.